Om Pramadina Nasandeha Kim Karishyami Vrittiman Utpadyante Vilyante Buddhascha Yata Jale. Om Shantihi Shantihi Shantihi. Ignorance is unreal. Therefore, how can it cause any real doubt? Therefore, what should the yogi do when endowed with this mind and its impressions? He should let them rise, and then dissolve them all, like bubbles, into water. Om peace, peace, peace. Om Aneka Janma Sampraptir Karmendana Vidahine Atmagyana Agni Danena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Om Shantihi Shantihi Shantihi. Eternal salutations to the Guru, who with the wisdom teachings burns away the karma that is accumulated over countless lifetimes. My eternal obeisances to the eternal teacher. Om peace, peace, peace. Om Sahana, Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karvavahai Tejasvi Navaditamastu Ma Vidveshavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May Brahman, the reality, protect us. May Brahman sustain us. May Brahman illumine our thinking process. May we not find fault with each other, with the world, or with the teachings. And may what we study be a source of inspiration to us eternally. Om peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us, and may peace be unto all. Om Hari Om. And with those two wisdom chants, one from the non-dual scripture called the Advaita Gita, and one from the Upanishads, we course into this third and final class of a series called Neutralizing Karma and Samskaras. So we've taken up the first two classes in finding out what those are. We haven't really begun to tell you how to neutralize them yet, because there's so much information to give to familiarize the Westerner with something like karma, which is a sort of a key word and a clue word that we use nowadays. We banter it about sometimes a little glibly, lip service wise, as they say. But samskara is even less known or more obscure. Samskara is a mental impression in the mind. So this beautiful quote from the Advaita Gita says, what should the yogi do when he's endowed with mind and impressions? Because he has them like everyone else. If he takes on a body, then he's got these things to deal with. And of course, if you've studied yogis or rishis or avaduts or other great souls like that, you will find what they do with that. They dissolve them all like bubbles into water at the end of every day, maybe even sooner. But that's given to the householder to at least sit at night in meditation and dissolve the doings of the day. So no residue will form from these actions that you've done. Actually, action, deed, these are two of the, and then thought, two of the three modes of human awareness that are potentially karma accruing. They'll leave behind a residue. That residue can eventually become a samskara, like the camel eating thorny bushes and builds that habit in it. So is reborn again to eat to eat thorny bushes. And we look at all of the basic species and see that going on: horses and cows and insects, even trees with their seeds, producing seeds all the time, as if the desire is to reproduce all the time, see as many bodies, as many forms as it can take on. Even ensure that for the future, for posterity, as they say. It's just to produce forms. But the yogi is different in that way. He's looking at reducing forms, reducing karmas that reduce forms. We've talked about that in terms of Jainism, how if you see the Jains wearing a white cloth and you think it's rather extreme that they're not stepping on bugs, or even the Buddhists, being very careful, then it becomes maybe even a source of humor for people who don't understand. But the thing is, it's really about reduction of karma. A Jain won't even leave the village to go to another village to work, because as he goes out, he may invite means for karma to accrue while he's away, while he's on his trip. So he'll keep the periphery of his doings very close in. It's actually a very good lesson for today, when we're running off to other countries and looking for resources, and devil take the hindmost and just going after what we want. To think about how much karma is being produced, not only for the individual. Remember last week, was it? 2 weeks ago, last week, yes. We looked at how these karmas called sanchita are from the past, and then karmas from the future are called agami. And then the karma right now, fructifying, is called prarabdha. So this karma from the past, or sanchita karma, is storing up. So we're not only storing it up individually, but as a collective body. Collective mind maybe could be called the combination of all minds. Let's leave the plants and insects out of it because they don't really have brains. But starting with the animal, and then mankind, and then finally the elementals, a kind of nether world they describe, and then the ancestors, and then finally the demigods and deities, gods and goddesses. Maybe leave them out too, because they might be getting out more toward what's called the causal mind. But definitely that subtle body or collective mind is right there in the middle with all the collection of these thoughts that are going on. And the transmigration process is that the mind, as it makes the journey inward and outward all the time through the 24 cosmic principles, in sets of 5s, as we were talking about, takes on forms and produces karma and gives up forms and has to pay for that, come back to pay for that karma. If that karma is of a malevolent or vicious or a non-neutralized type. Even good karma can bring you back, you see. Good and bad are chains that hold, one of iron, one of gold. Or strike off thy fetters, bonds that bind thee down, of shining gold or darker baser ore. Because you're a slave either way, either caressed or whipped. If you're a caressed slave, it's like a gold chain, and if you're a whipped chain, it's like an iron chain. So off with them, he says. Snap these chains that hold you and bind you, and live free of karma and don't collect any anymore. And so actually, when we say the title of this class is Neutralizing Karma and Samskaras, it's rather a misnomer, isn't it? I mean, how do you collect such a thing? It's better just to not do so. Just to live evenly, even-mindedly, not do any actions that are in restlessness or in tamas, slothfulness. Make sure that this non-attenuating mind, as sometimes it's called in like the Jivan Mukti Viveka, non-attenuate mind, they call it in that scripture. Keep your mind at even so that nothing can collect there. I quoted last week, I think, that song, as we were just talking about songs before the live streaming audience joined us. Welcome, by the way. Is that there's a line in one song that says, karma, kama, and yama all go looking for the illumined soul when he passes from the body, but they can't find him. Kama is desire, so desire goes looking for him, but he had satisfied all his desires previously, fulfilled them in the Dharma, or maybe came into the body without desires, like Sri Krishna and souls of that element. So Kama couldn't find him. So there was no way to attach him to another life. Karma went looking for him, which means cause and effect. He must have done some acts, so he must have something to pay. So God of karma went looking for him and tried to pull him into a body, but he couldn't find him. He was karmaless. And my teacher is Sheshananda. See, no residue means the bliss of having no residue after you pass from the body. So lived in such an even way like that, like a bird flying through the sky leaves no trace. That kind of, as Sri Ramakrishna said, is absolutely free of any kind of leftovers, any residuals. And then Yama went looking too, because Yama is the god of death, and wanted to see what he owed and how he could bring him back into the form so he could pay that. See, but the illumined soul was beyond death, transcended death, realized that death was an illusion, and therefore that beautiful song is there with that line. So it explains in a song and with wisdom lyrics how a person has transcended karmas and has reduced samskaras so that they don't form anymore. Now, if you're just talking about dissolving bubbles in water, Buddhist cha jata jale, jale is water. So the Bhagavad Gita says that. See, just dissolve all these things that come up in your mind like you would dissolve bubbles in water. Say somebody insulted me, just dissolve it. See, don't hold anything. Or you won the lottery, just dissolve it. You see, just $1 million comes and goes. Whatever happens to you, good or bad, you just dissolve it. And that's kind of an everyday practice you do. It's not the best use for meditation, I would say, as a Dharma teacher, but it is definitely one of those that particularly the householder can use to keep the playing field clear so that higher experiences can come. You can use your meditation for actually coming face to face with God. That's what Gandhi said about Sri Ramakrishna. So when you see Sri Ramakrishna, you come face to face with God. So you want to have that vision inside of yourself, that highest vision and form. So keeping that playing field clear is very important day to day, and will benefit you toward the end of your life too, when your body's infirm or your prana isn't flowing as freely as it was when you were younger and so forth. Then you can settle your mind, despite what the body has to do with it anymore, or the prana, the energy. So in fact, you practice that as a Vedantist anyway, the 5 sheaths, right? You weren't the body, you weren't the prana, you weren't the mind, you weren't the intellect, and you weren't the ego. The 5 sheaths are the Adara system. So you are that which pervades them all, and that which transcends them all at the same time. Atman and Brahman. Only distinction being there that Atman can associate with the 5 sheaths. Brahman, never. Never, never, never. So you won't find it in form. You'll have to go looking for it outside form. So karma, kama, and yama aren't going to know Brahman very well. They've heard of it too, but they still have their duties to perform. So looking into such in-depth teachings that you find in Tantra and in Yoga and Vedanta and Buddhism and other great darshanas, clear paths of seeing, in India is another way of just keeping the playing field clear. See, there's a beautiful slokas again in Jivan Mukti Viveka and other scriptures that say, the devotee doesn't have to squelch desires. That is, the devotee of this path doesn't have to squelch desires or attenuate the ego or force austerities. All the devotee needs to do in this path is to keep the mind on the Dharma teachings alone. So you just don't leave any room. Your mind is always thinking about the Dharma. The predicament is for most aspirants, let's say, is that they don't like the world anymore. That's why they become aspirants. And they can't reach God yet. You see? So you're caught in the middle. So what to do when you're caught in the middle? What does the yogi do? See, when the mind has these impressions, naturally. Fortunately for the yogi, his impressions are all aklista vrittis. They're all good vrittis. They're all positive, maybe transcendent. Maybe his impressions are of samadhi from a past lifetime. So he comes back to body and says, here I can enjoy, you see, samadhi. Sri Ramakrishna said that. This world isn't so bad. Here I can eat, drink, and be merry, he said. But there's a huge difference between a Sri Ramakrishna eating, drinking, and being merry, and a worldly person doing the same. You see. You have to put them side by side and see the difference. One cries at the time of death, the other laughs at the time of death. Is the way one scripture puts it. So, these words, there are no equivalents for them in, say, Western psychology. Samskara, mental impression, complex. That's from one lifetime alone, you see. It's a complex because of your parental upbringing, or because you had a problem with your mother, or whatever the case may be, you see. But actually, no one's to blame for your problem but you. You can't blame God, you can't blame your parents. Whose fault was it that the man was born blind? The parents? No, Jesus said. See, so it's really your kuleana, as we say here in Hawaii. Sorry for the Hawaiian word to throw in there with the Sanskrit. But it's actually the karma is yours. And it really puts the whole matter of freedom in your own hands. Freedom or bondage is in your hands. That's one of the ennobling messages of the Vedanta, which has called a lot of us Westerners to it when everything else failed, like secular wisdom and intellectual learning and such things. So in Western psychology, where do you find a word like samskara? A mental impression caused, as we said from last week here, see, over here, a mental impression formed via desire-based actions with the propensity for causing rebirth. You won't find that in the English dictionary. That's my version of what you might find if we co-opted some Sanskrit from the rishis and put it into an English dictionary. It would be that kind of noun. You see. We then have a way of explaining everything that's wrong and everything that's right with us in the world. And also a way of going beyond good and bad, pleasure and pain, life and death, and all other pairs of opposites, as Sri Krishna says in the Gita. The Dvandva Mohena, Arjuna. See, you must be aware, be careful of the deluding pairs of opposites. Mohena means moha. They delude you. How do they delude you? Well, we know extreme cases of delusion, those aren't hard to find in hospitals and so forth, mental wards and all that. But the kind of delusion that Krishna is mentioning to Arjuna here, who is just a very good moral person, is the kind of delusion that keeps you away from keeping your mind on reality. The good and bad draw you away from that middle path, that third eye being opened so you'll know the truth, by distraction. That's what Jamgang Khantrul Rinpoche used to say to us all the time, Tibetan teachers, it's really, this is a matter of distraction. It's the really main problem right now, especially in the West. You have too many varieties going on. So look back in the Sanskrit dictionaries again. Vaichitra, there it is. It's one of the evolutes of Maya. See, one of the 16 evolutes of Maya, Vaichitra. Too many varieties. And it takes your mind out of its non-dual awareness, which is its natural state, and posits it smack dab right in all of this duality. And duality can then turn into distraction, and distraction into scattered mind. And scattered mind is called kshipta. It's unhealthy mind. It's like to try and gain a mind back from that kind of state, Patanjali says, is like trying to gather mustard seeds that have been blown out of a package by the wind. If any of you have ever handled mustard seeds, then you're going to go looking in the green grass for these green seeds that are as tiny as smaller than an ant's head. So that's how hard it's going to be to retract the mind from that kind of distraction. So as I was beginning to say here in this kind of preamble to the rest of this class is that we should not entertain samskaras and karmas anymore. That it's a relative law, samskara and karma. It's not something that you labor over in Vedanta. You don't hear a lot of teachings about it in Vedanta, you just hear it mentioned. And so it's as if you come to Vedanta, you're already an advanced practitioner. Or if you come to some great soul like Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, and you've gotten the name of the Lord, his mantra, in this day and age, then you're free already, you just don't know it. You're free already, you just don't know it. See? I've had several swamis tell me that in my student years, see. Not that I'm still not a student. But, as I said, if you've taken the name of Sri Ramakrishna, the mantra, received that, then this is your last lifetime. Really, Swami? Are you sure? Well, maybe one or two more. But it's not like that story of Narada going to see Vishnu. See, Lokema came up to me the other day and said, "Will you tell me that story again? I really like it." I said, Vishnu in his Vaikuntha heaven, you see, very, very high place. Narada can go there and have darshan with him, back and forth. His karmas are so annulled, his samskaras are so much about Vaikuntha that that's where he lives, even when he's not there, you see. Just like we should live in Brahman even when we're here, you see. As if this is all unreal and Brahman's the only reality. So Narada's walking along, runs into this man who's sitting under a tree meditating. The man says, "I recognize you, you're the Devarshi, Narada. You're going to see Vishnu, aren't you? You can do that, can't you?" "Yes, I'm going to see Vishnu. Will you ask him how many lifetimes I have left?" Narada says yes. Walks along, runs into another man who's dancing like this. You see. You've heard this story? Most people have, but I like retelling it. So the man dancing stops and said, "You're Narada," and bows to him, and then says, "You're going to see Vishnu when you ask him how many more lifetimes I have." So Narada has darshan with Vishnu and comes back. On the way back he runs into the man who's meditating under the tree. And the man says, "Did you see Vishnu? Do you have darshan?" And Narada says, "Yes." And he says, "You have 2 or 3 more lifetimes yet." And the man goes, just head in his hand, and just starts belaboring the fact that he thought he'd get free that lifetime for sure. So then Narada leaves him in his state and walks on, runs into the man still dancing, and says to Narada, "Oh, how many lifetimes?" "Well, you have about 1,000, give or take a few." And the man goes, "Only 1,000? Wonderful!" And he goes on dancing and dancing. And then Vishnu appears to him and frees him. You see? Because of his attitude, that's our punchline, you see. So, depending on your attitude. Like another story, a man said, "I want to see the Divine Mother." And he heard that if he, from one sage, said, "Well, that's as difficult as trying to empty the ocean with a feather." So he took a feather, went to the ocean, and he started working. He did that for days, for weeks. Finally, the Divine Mother appeared to him and said, "All right, you're on my mind too much, you see. Please, just, you'll be free, Be free." So, yes, exactly. So karma and samskaras are unreal. Ignorance is unreal, then why should it cause any real doubt? That was the first beautiful line. That's like a Zen koan. If ignorance, which is the cause of all your problems, is unreal, then where's doubt? Where's fear? Where's suffering? Where's misery? Where's karma and samskaras if you have that strong will, state of mind, non-dual state of mind, to say that ignorance is unreal? Like karma, kama, and yama cannot find me. See, I'm free, I'm free. So with that kind of declaration, or mahavakya, great saying, as your mead, as your main standpoint, then you can look into anything more clearly, anything that's impeding you. That's the beautiful thing about taking a higher position that the lower position all of a sudden offers up its hidden presence, you see. They say that's the worst thing about indecision. See, staying on the fence, as they say, not making one or the other choice. So let's say you're on the fence and you finally were forced off the fence. So you made the wrong move. So you went to the wrong part of the decision. And automatically, your mistake was revealed to you. So now you can get on the right side of the fence. So that's the problem with indecision, is that it keeps you in that duality of should I, shouldn't I, pro, con, good, bad, virtue, vice, and make a move. It's not rocket science, as you say. If you're a sensitive and aware person, you'll know right away if you made the wrong move. Remember last week I told you Vivekananda said, the more advanced spiritually person, their karmas come back at them right away. So if a very advanced spiritual person makes a wrong decision, wrong move, then he'll get a slap in the face right away. See, it'll be revealed to him. Whereas this other poor person, has started a chain of cause and effect that's going to form links, nidanas, the Buddhists call it, and chain you right into this cause and effect problem for many lifetimes. Whether it's 2 or 3 or 1,000, that's way too many anyway. Why don't we live free now? You see, as we always are. As Swamiji said, I want everyone to be free as the air they breathe. That's a direct quote, one of his favorite sayings. So, going along in this way then, we come to this problem of neutralizing samskaras and karmas. They're hard to see. No word for them in English. We finally find a word. We generally say, a complex is something that is formed in this lifetime, but when they say samskara in Sanskrit, they mean, remember that bucket of rusty nails I talked to you about last week? See, that leave nails in water in a bucket and the rains, come back later and the nails are fused together rusty style. That's what we want to talk about today, because last week we showed this chart, wasn't it? Samskaras in the human mind. And so we don't need to go through that, but you see on this chart this one little group of bubbles here around this bigger bubble. Covetousness, anger, lust, hatred, and so forth. When all of those get together in one person, in one mind, then they're going to form what's called a samskara skanda, which is adding another Sanskrit word on top of an already unknown Sanskrit word. But it really means this complex. It's where you could use that word in English. What I'm saying is that most people's samskaras are based in one of the 6 passions. I could point to you, point to you, point to you. What of the 6 passions give you the worst problem? Anger, lust, envy, greed, jealousy, pride, delusion. See, and you'd say, I don't have that much problem with greed. I don't have, and so forth and so on. You could say, come upon the one that gives you the problem, you see. And so, good. Then you do that analytical process and you reduce the one that gives you the problem. But these poor souls that have all of these in a samskara skanda, like a bucket of rusty nails, are in a very precarious position. And it's going to, remember, dictate future births. It's not like, when I die, my problems are over. People committing suicide have tried that one and found themselves right back in the body again with parents that, of course, match their level of consciousness. Krishna says those who are caught in tamas fall, those who are caught in rajas circle, and those who are caught in sattva arise. So you want sattva, you want that balance of mind. And rajas, born in restless wombs, he says. Yoni is the word. Born in restless wombs. And then tamas, born in slothful, lazy, dark wombs. Even animal wombs, maybe. But we won't get into that here. We'd have to take evidence from scriptures that are Buddhist and Hindu and so forth and look at that. So a samskara skanda is the point here. Think of that as that bucket of rusty nails that they're going to have to take a hammer, empty the water, break them apart, and start sanding away at all this rust. And actually it was a teaching of Sri Ramakrishna too, that he used this idea of bubbles around a single bubble, and the bubbles around a single big bubble are the children, and the big bubble are the parents, you see. So if you can break the big bubble, that is your attachment to worldly life and progeny, then all these bubbles, the little ones, will go away by themselves. But most people are ending up picking away at these little bubbles. In the case of today's people who enter spiritual life, it's, I think I'll give up coffee then, you see. If that's going to get them enlightenment, right? Or maybe I'll become vegetarian or whatever. So they're picking away at these little bubbles, you see, and this big one is still remaining there, this samskara that's at the root of it. But the samskara skandha can form around that, you see. And this is all in a subtle sense. You're not going to find this if you dissect the brain and so forth, just like you're not going to decide to discover the subtle nadis if you look at the gross nadis. This is all kingdom of heaven within you kind of thing. This is all my Father's mansion has many chambers kind of thing. This is all nadis that you're running back inside of you, but you don't want these nadis to run towards klista vrittis, that is negative paths, but rather you want them aklista, at least positive, and then you might be able to transcend them. So let's look at this chart closely now, because we want to get towards that. Another chart that has to do more with neutralizing these kinds of things, an actual practice to neutralize them. Might be good to know some facts about samskaras. They are formed due to egoic, desire-based action in past lives. So right away we part company or lift off of the Western way of thinking, materialistic way, one lifetime in the box kind of thinking. They lie dormant, unnoticed, and are hard to detect and neutralize. Well, that's probably going to help you if you're going to try and neutralize them, is that you're going to have to go with a searchlight, go searching inside of the mind, which is again not the brain, but inside your thinking process, inside your dream state, inside your deep sleep state, to find these tendencies, the first of which is the desire to be reborn. Remember cyclic transmigration? We took that last week. It's a desire for cyclic transmigration. You want to be born in the body. And you don't know how many people I've come across. They say, talk with them about this, and they say, well, I'm fine with rebirth, Babaji. Many bodies is great. I like that. See? But they're speaking to me when they're in their teens or 20s or 30s, and before birth, growth, disease, old age, decay, and death set in. But I have met them later in their life. One person said, oh, what you're teaching, that's all profound and everything, but it doesn't apply to me. I'm fine. A year later, this person was sick with a death-debilitating disease. A year later, she had changed her tune totally, see, and looked differently. So, I'm not saying this to scare anyone, or it's just that karmas, samskaras dictate your future lifetimes. You should know this and try and keep your prarabdha karma, your present karma, worked out day to day, like dissolving bubbles in water, and take a piece of your sanchita karma and work it out in this lifetime. Maybe work it all out in this lifetime if you can. Yes, it's a relative law, but you can't deny it if you're not enlightened. If you're enlightened, then turn off the camera, shut off the mic, and leave the room. You see, I'm not talking to you. Then you're going to have to prove to me that you're enlightened, though. I'll put you to certain questions that my teachers put to me. But anyway, without getting too labored about that, that's a really good point. They're hard to detect. They're subtle impressions. You could probably see them in others before they see them in yourself, before you see them in yourself. Oh, that person has a definite samskaric impression in them for riches, you see, or for whatever. That's why we have music for it even. Japane kyun chhod diya Ram naam, Japane kyun chhod diya Ram, Nama Japane kyun chhod diya Ram naam, Japane Chordiya Rama Nama Japane Kyu Chordiya. Kalas, this beautiful songwriter, he says, "Tell me, O mind, why have you given up uttering the name of Ram? When you should have renounced your anger, deceit, and your desire for wealth and pleasures, you've given up your integrity instead. See? And sacrificed your love of truth instead." So, another song written in India says, you've assayed the gold of your consciousness, but now you're bartering it away for the glass marbles of relative existence. You found the gold in you, but now you're distributing it away to get these mundane experiences in mundane human convention, as our founder used to call it, Lexicon. So, anyway, that about this desire for wealth, which shows up here, actually showed up right away. See, you've got this attraction to wealth, and that's also part of the Samskara skandha, one of those rusty nails. It's drawing you back to relative existence, as if you could ever satisfy it. My teacher used to give this lecture once a year. Satiation never comes. And he'd always start out saying, the West is following the Bhoga Marga, but we in India are following the Jnana Marga. You need to follow the Jnana Marga. Bhoga Marga means path of enjoyment, and Jnana means path of wisdom. So, you see, shift over and start, as the Buddhists say, practicing punya instead of papa. Instead of demerit, add on this merit. You can convince yourself, whether it be through scriptures or guru or songs even, that this is the right path for you, and therefore turn those samskaras in on themselves. Neutralize those karmas so that agami karma will not come at you anymore. You'll actually take a lifetime where you have no karma. They say quite often there's a lifetime before you dedicate yourself to the freeing of all sentient beings, and prior or just after the lifetime that you finished up with your desires. You want to live one lifetime free. That's Buddhist, basically. 3 lifetimes to get rid of your karma, they say. So it's probably, in some schools of Buddhism, it's like 1 to recognize it, 1 to do sadhana and do away with it, and 1 to live free. You need to have a free life. It's like going from worldly life and life of suffering to intellectual life and so forth and so on, but finally you live this one dharmic life. And then you have a divine life after that. And then no life, or what Christ called eternal life after that. I'll make you fishers of men. If you just follow me, you've had loaves and fishes and wives and huts and rivers and boats and all that, but you don't have an eternal life yet. So follow me and I'll make you fishers of men. That's what he meant. So these samskaras and these samskara skandhas and these karmas stand in the way of that for most people. And they really aren't that hard to surmount. So there's a bunch of rusty nails in that bucket. I've got a hammer. If I had a hammer. Should I sing it? I'd hammer in the morning and I'd hammer at night. Means get into your meditation and take these apart and disband all of that, dissolve it, and live free. Even have 1 breath of freedom will be enough for you to compel you on towards ultimate freedom. Jivan Mukti. All right, now I've said enough about that second point. Third, they operate in tandem with time, karma, and life's occurrences. Another important piece of information. When you learn something like this, you actually are beginning to neutralize your samskaras. That's why this class is about that. We think, oh, now I've learned this from a guru, then I think I better go put it into practice. But actually, while you were learning it from the guru, that's when you started neutralizing your samskaras. If you were all ears and attention, and you understood this and you accepted it, you're already working on it. That's Vedantic sadhana. See? I mean, the sadhana of yoga, a little different. Sadhana of tantra, a little different. Sadhana of Buddhism and so forth. But the sadhana of Vedanta is not about method. And I looked all over the Vedanta and I found maybe one sign of a real method. It's called the Four Treasures and the Six Jewels. And sadhana chatushtaya is the Sanskrit word. It means you start with viveka, you go to vairagya, then you get samadhamma, upariti, titiksha, samadhana, and shraddha. That's the six jewels. And then you get mumukshutvam, which is a desire for freedom. You have to go through all that before you even get a true desire for freedom. That's not even freedom itself yet, you see. But my point really being, so as not to discourage you, is that viveka started it all out. And viveka is an inner tool. You see. I mean, yes, you can go outside and say, there's a bad boy, there's a good boy at school or something. You begin to know the difference between good and bad, but we're talking about something far beyond that when we talk about discrimination between the real and the unreal. You don't look at a good boy and a bad boy and make the distinction and walk away. You say, good boy, bad boy, they're both unreal. Good and bad are unreal. See? You're missing the point of non-duality. This is a moral exercise, but the real thing you want to get to is that the world is unreal. And only Brahman is real. Don't forget that part. Because I've said that to people. In Sanskrit, it's Brahman Satya Jagad Mithya. It's one of the Vedantic axioms. So you hear it at every Vedanta society or center or Swami you go to. Brahman Satya Jagad Mithya. Brahman is real, the world is unreal. So if they happen to be concentrating on the world is unreal a lot, kicking that dead horse, as it were, see. But they fail to say, because Brahman is the only reality, you see, then that's again missing the point. Brahman is the only reality, so the world can't be real. Can't be two realities here. They would contradict one another. So Brahman is the only reality. You could take that a third step and say, therefore, the world's also real, if you see it as Brahman. So the first step in method is neti neti, isn't it? But what do you end up with? Iti iti. From not this, you should end up with all this. But you can't skip steps along the way, or all this is not going to look good on you see. We see that with both Western students and teachers taking up the mantle. That it's not looking good on them. So, a little bit there again about time, karma, and life's occurrences. They influence present life behavior for better or for worse. That's easy to prove by looking around. They can congeal in a deeper complex if not dissolved early. So this is the Samskara skandha. We'll look at it. You don't want that to happen. They can only be removed by mental, spiritual purification. And that's this mental practice we're talking about. You have to use this mind and its intelligence in such a way that it cleans the rafters, you see. Spring cleaning time. And it includes the attic, you see. Not just the basement. The basement should have been done already. And the main floor, we know how to clean that, you see. Some bhakti and devotion. But up here is a difficult proposition. As up here, these centers are what's keeping you from reaching ultimate reality, isn't it? Here is good. It's a good way to start. But the lover of God reaches salvation. Does he reach liberation? Or does he come to a place where he says, I want to know. Enough dancing, enough singing, enough praising the Lord. Where is that reality that's beyond praise? And if there are any Vaishnavas watching, I apologize. But eating sugar, fine. You see, we all want to eat sugar in the highest heaven. See, as long as it's not the heaven of our ancestors, because that's not the highest heaven. You eat that sugar and it turns sour. So you're back on earth before you know it. Samskara for ancestor worship. Who has it? Well, let's see, Japan, India, Hinduism, Shintoism. You see, there are whole cultures that are into samskaras for ancestors. Not that ancestor worship on its own is not good, you see. But to realize that that's a cross-section of the collective mind and to move deeper will really benefit your ancestors. You'll help free them, which is what Buddha wanted to do. And he sat under the Bo tree. He wanted to free all the living people, his father and mother, the King Sakya, and his son Rahula. You know what that means, right? Chain around my neck. That's what Buddha named his son. Let's see, what'll I name you? How about chain around my neck? So he wanted to go away and come back and free them. And when he did, he saw what was keeping them down. There's this round of births and deaths, what he called the Kala Chakra, which had a very, very definite stop, and maybe even an apex at the ancestors. And people could not get out of them. That loop, if you're talking about that, you're talking about lower center, mid-center, and mid-center. You see, lower, middling, and mid. So you're talking about Muladhara and so forth, up to the Manipura. I mean, think about it. This is, food is digested, fetus is formed. I mean, this third center is a huge vortex where souls are coming in and out, and millions of nerves are attached there. Even physical nerves, what to speak of subtle nerves inside of physical nerves. So this is a very difficult proposition for ancestors to get out of this loop of the three lower chakras, if you're going to talk about it in Kundalini speak, you see. So there is, at the top of this apex of ancestors, a little opening, and very, very moral, very pious beings can move through that opening and transcend. And that's where you get these devotees of God. And devotees of God who have an intense feeling for God with form. The formless is still there, you see, to be, well, I couldn't say to be seen, to be realized, you see. So my point there, and it repeats, mental and intellectual purification and spiritual purification are important. What are the two spiritual impediments according to the Father in yoga? Backsliding is one. Taking one step forward, taking two steps back. You ever get that feeling in your spiritual life? See, it's hard to measure the growth of spiritual life. In fact, she said, Holy Mother, praise be unto her always, that it's rather futile to try and measure your spiritual progress. You should just do your practice and let what comes to you come. So, in that sense then, this is a kind of karmic recurrence too that could happen to you, where you're trying to get into this goal-oriented process. That's why Vedanta is mostly a mental and spiritual exercise up here, because this is where you create the karma. That is, act is thought is father to the deed, right? So this is where you create the karma, and you can't do away with it in dream or after death. You have to do away with it in the waking state, here on earth, where you created it. That's where the bucket of nails formed. That's where you have to take the hammer and part them, you see, once and for all, and get free. Then you may come back in illumined state. Now, these samskaras often remain in residual form until samadhi occurs. Ouch! You see. So this is a teaching pretty much of the Father of Yoga as well, is that there are some, well, as my brother says sometimes, some scars are worse than other scars. So those scars that you have on you, on your mind, you see, from bad experiences, like cutting with a knife over and over again, you get a, what's it called, when it heals, scar tissue, yeah. You get that kind of scar tissue there. Well, it's the same with the mind. You cut with a bad action over and over again. And yes, it'll heal up, and then you'll cut it again, heal up. Pretty soon you have a kind of scar tissue. It's a good way of sort of describing a samskara and a samskara skanda. So some scars are worse than other scars. And this is where here in this teaching you would say that those samskaras that are keeping you from samadhi are not that bad. They're samskaras of love of God with form. There's samskaras of compassion for the sufferings of others. There's a whole bunch of samskaras that operate at a very subtle and high level, even a causal level. If you were to go into deep sleep consciously, for instance, and you see the samskaras that were there in your deep sleep state, one of them probably would be your memory of samadhi, your memory of seeing God before. And people even say that. And I think I remember seeing the light before I was born, or just after I was born. Seeing an ocean of light. Or I go into sleep, I see an ocean of light come out, and can't quite remember it, but I have a taste of it in my mouth. So these are these samskaras that are in operation as your consciousness moves from waking to dreaming into a deeper state of your consciousness, and would explain then samadhi itself. Not only, probably not nirvikalpa samadhi, but savitarka samadhi. It will explain those lower samadhis. Savikalpa, or savitarka, savichara. Father of Yoga put them into a whole bunch of categories for us, about 8. And 4 main ones with 4 attending, or 2 attending. So we've done that, gone through that in retreat before. So they will remain in a residual form, and actually that's why you don't have to fear meditation. You say, oh, I'm leaving my body. Will I come back to it again? If you're fully illumined, you'd probably say, like a blown off leaf in a gale, I'm not coming back, you see. But if you're not ready for leaving the body yet, those very samskaras will kick in and bring you back. Just like you come out of deep sleep, don't you? And you were no one then, weren't you? No children, no money, no ego, no name, no form, no time. Everything was gone, but you still came back. So what's this talk about fear, you see? Ignorance is unreal. Then how can it cause any real fear? So you will come back according to these subtle samskaras. And it actually opens up a whole level of teaching, you see. Each one of these points, bullet points, will open up a whole level of teaching. Which is good, which is again why you're neutralizing them right now as I speak. I mean, if you're getting a transmission from me right now and not just a professor talking to a student and taking notes, if you're actually getting it, you see, then you are neutralizing the samskaras, because becoming aware of awareness is what destroys non-awareness. But it has to be a vigil that you're on at first, because non-awareness is the norm for you. Or partly aware, sometimes on, sometimes off, running hot, running cold. Oh, I'm so great, now I'm meditating. I go to the job and, well, I forgot all that, right? How do I bring Brahman into the world? They asked Holy Mother that once, do you always think of Brahman? She looked at him and said, how's that possible? There's this work to do. As if work and inaction, action and inaction just can't come together, just like oil and water can't. They seem to, but they'll separate eventually. So action and inaction are like that. You have to take your mind, your consciousness, put it on your work. Hopefully you'll remain aware of, I sang that last week, Shakale Tomar Icha. Be aware of the Icha Shakti, whose work it all belongs to. So, you say I'm working for a boss, or I'm working for the government, or I'm working for the ego. Don't work for them anymore. Work for the Divine Mother. Just replace those with her. And then, you will be keeping Mother in the quotient of your work. It's a mental exercise, right? And you have to implement it and stay with it until you don't think of any other way. You don't think in any other way. Does it make sense? Then there's no samskara then to form around distracted thinking or wrong thinking. That's the Eightfold Path of Buddha. Right perspective, right livelihood. I mean, he's asking you to remake your samskaras. Penultimate one, they cause the soul's transmigration in continual cycles. Ouch again. They dictate all the details of the next life's manifestation. So, look in the mirror, used to say. Now when the hippies did that in the 60s, it was look in the mirror, oh, aren't I beautiful? or there I am, whatever. But when the yogi looks in the mirror, it's like, how far apart are my eyes? What are my ears shaped like? Do I have a big cranial vault or a small one? How pronounced is my nose? How cleft is my chin, or tucked or pointed? He's reading a map of his past lifetimes when he looks at his body. And that's precisely why when you walked in the room with Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, he knew about you before you reached him, halfway across the floor of the bedroom there at Dr. Nishikali Temple. Before you even reached him, he had already, oh, I see. I know what's wrong with that person, and I know how to fix him. Now, will he listen? It's a spiritual physiognomy. You're like a jet mechanic's blueprint to him, you see, and he's the master mechanic, you see. And your body is, and Vivekananda used to say that, your body is, reflects what you bring to the table in this lifetime. So things aren't just random. Things don't just appear serendipitously and so forth. That's all silliness. You see. There's a reason for everything. And some of these reasons are a little sobering. Only because we haven't looked at them for a long time, for many lifetimes. We heard the word America 3 lifetimes ago and we went, I'll go there. Sounds fun to me. That's an American samskara, you see. First I'll be the hero and defeat Hitler, and then I'll be the villain, you see. And take resources from the world and keep them for myself. It's a samskara, and a collective karma comes with it. Why else do you think Dalai Lama wrote President Bush on 9/11 and said, do not react? Or he got a letter from him. See? Eye for eye, no. See? Don't react. Just wait. There's a lot of collective karma that's going to happen if you bite back. See? I'd like to read that letter, just know exactly what it says, but this is what I heard. But that's not the way the warmonger, the Westerner, thinks, you see. That kind of Westerner thinks. There are many of us who are Westerners who don't think that way. In fact, some of us are thinking in a more enlightened way. See? So that's what's needed. Now, just like we went around this left to right, before we take our break, which is in a little while, let's go around this left to right. Now you see a head with a brain. And the line there reads, the subtle mind of a stereotypical person. So here's what's in the mind of a stereotypical person. As Vivekananda said, there's nothing that's all good here, and there's nothing that's all bad here. And it means nature, nothing all good in nature for sure, because we were just without electricity for a while in our recent storm and hurricane here on the Big Island. So there's nothing all good in nature or all bad in nature. The same is true with beings. In minds, you see, they have good, bad, and they also have mixed. Now there's a sort of neutral, you see, with a minus sign or a straight across line. The black is of course a negative, and then here's a positive. So I've used these 3 icons, as it were, or little images, to show that there are good, bad, and mixed propensities in people. And those are based on their good, bad, and mixed karmas. See? Sometimes we're do-gooders, sometimes, we don't know what we're doing. And other times we're doing something in a sort of evil-minded way. See? Jealousies and things that happen, don't have to tell you. Just look at the news. Now, before showing you some of those, let's read Lord Buddha's quote. He says, the discerning person straightens the mind, which is fickle, unsteady, and difficult to restrain, like the skilled fletcher straightens the shaft of an arrow. That's out of the Dhammapada. Some Arhat remembered Buddha saying that to him and wrote that down. It got collected in the Dhammapada. It's funny because when I read that in the Dhammapada, I thought back to my 2nd grade. My teacher's name was Mr. Fletcher. Or was it Mrs. Fletcher? I can't remember. But it was a Fletcher. And I never knew that was an arrow maker, you see. So then flash forward 40 years, and think about that as being a profession, you see. Like there's a story in the Advaita where the Fletcher gets a commission from the king to produce thousands of arrows. So he's got money, you see. So he's sitting there concentrating on making these arrows perfectly straight from these little boughs and pieces of wood that aren't quite straight. So he's like sanding them down so they were just perfect, you see, and then putting the feather and tip on them and so forth. So he's in perfect concentration doing that all the time. So the Advaita saw that and said, "Oh, you're my teacher of concentration." Because while he was fletching these arrows, the Advaita was staying in his house, watching him, you see, and reading and studying, meditating. And a whole wedding processional went by, elephants, clowns, things, that everyone would run to look at, spectacle, see. But the Fletcher never looked up once. He had this commission to fill, and he didn't want to make one mistake. So it's like, Advaita went, "Oh, my teacher of dharana, concentration, sixth limb of yoga, I'll take you." So he made him his teacher. So anyway, Lord Buddha is saying the spiritual aspirant is going to be a Fletcher to the mind. It's going to make it absolutely straight, not an anomaly in it. Now, let's go back to the head with the stereotypical person here and see what some of these are. Here's a black one. Is attached to pleasure and the pursuit of wealth. I didn't really say it, but Jyotana Jyote Jagame Dilal Chakara Rasoratane Kyun Jordia. He goes on singing that beautiful song, Nama Japani Kyun. He says, "You flatter the millionaire, but you forget to praise the Lord, Sri Ram. Though Ram is the owner of the entire universe, and the millionaire only has a little tiny store of cash, you see. So what's wrong with you that you're flattering the millionaire?" So this is the problem here, attached to wealth and the pleasure it brings. And this is we think, oh, there's that flatterer. That's not really what we're seeing there. We're seeing a person who has been reborn due to that problem in his mind. See? And we're not thinking in those terms. Maybe we think he's got a bad habit, he can get over it. But, he can't, because he doesn't realize that he's running along that narrow path, that negative nadi, that nerve that's heading right back to the samskara of rebirth. The next one's also black. You see, tendency towards addiction due to substance abuse in previous lives. These are my own choosing. I could have put a lot of things in here, but I'm looking at it today and saying, what's the samskara skanda of a problematic person today? See? And so addiction to substances is nothing new. I mean, they were smoking and opium in China and so forth way back when, and people were addicted. But we're seeing it today in its new virulent form, you might say, on all sorts of levels. And in fact, as Jangang Khantrul Rinpoche said, it's so much distraction. Now, if you're a strong person and that happens to you, no problem. You can get over it in a day or a week, you see. Oh, I tried it, didn't really like it, you see. Some of my friends were saying that, the hippies were saying that about cocaine. I don't like it, man. Makes me nervous, see. So, if you're a strong person, basically, you can forget all that. But if you're a weak person, even coffee can become a huge problem to you, or cigarettes, something that you should be smoking once a day, and just enjoying, then becomes this 4-pack a day thing, you see, because you're weak. You're dependent, you're addicted. And you think, well, one lifetime, one set of lungs, I'll die. It doesn't matter anyway. But you don't know what's going on back here in the real part of yourself. Body, senses, brain, mind. See? That mind is the projector of everything. What does the yogi do with this mind and its projections? That we just chanted that. He knows he's got a mind and he's got projections, so he's busy attenuating them all the time, so that these karmas and samskaras won't form. Now let's look at another one here. There's a couple that I put just with headings. Personality, genealogy. Those are pretty neutral. They're given to everyone. It just depends on what you do with them. Now there's a positive one. This tendency in this person's mind practiced religion in a past existence and has a potential for spiritual awakening because of it. So was an avid devotee on the moral and ethical level. See, selected a religion and so forth. You say over here, is it there? There was another one that was sort of like that, but basically kind of like this. Forgetful due to lack of study in a previous lifetime. See? Or habit of laziness, so is unable to mature. No, so the religion that this person had would have got them into study. I remember when I left my family at 19 years of age and got free from that whole societal obligation, I started reading the scriptures right away. I became vegetarian right away. I began meditating right away. It's just like, who taught me this? Mm-hmm. I mean, I was doing that for 6, 7, 8 years before I even met my guru. So the better question would be not who taught you this, but what was keeping you from it. 19 years of paying society obligation, of growing up in a Western culture is what kept me from it. Left to my own devices, who knows how early I might have started. You know, when Shankara started, 8 years old or earlier, he knew most of the scriptures of India by the time he was 10. He was teaching gray bears when he was 12. Of course, that is samskara, you see. That is major samskara of the highest type. Wisdom transmission right there, stored and completely uncovered for the taking and the utilizing for the highest good of humanity. See? So you don't know, just like you might have these features that are pointing to some negative tendencies in you, you've got these other hidden store, all knowledge lies within you kind of samskaras, that who knows what would happen if you gave yourself room to let them come out. You know, saying is you're getting in your own way, you're tripping over your own shoelaces and all that. If you could just settle that matter and just sit quietly for a week, a month, who knows what would come up in the mind? Isn't that why you take retreat or go on a meditation retreat for weeks or something? Or even go in a vision quest into the forest, you see. Just let's put all that aside and see what comes up in my mind. It's really what people are saying when they do that. Whether they know it or not, they're trying to know themselves. And their self, their real self, has become covered by the non-self. Body's the non-self. Energy flowing through the body is the non-self, prana. Mind, brain is the non-self. The intellect is the non-self. And the ego is the non-self. The 5 coverings, or sheaths. Koshas are the non-self. Talking about Shankara, that's the teaching he gave in the Vivekachudamani. Now meet the real self, you see. Get thee behind me, as Christ said. And now meet the real self. It's you with a capital Y. I with a capital I. Me with a capital M. Oh, that's usually used for Krishna. So, yeah, it's amazing, which is why they say you have all this potential, not just intellectually, but you need to give that a chance. Your spiritual propensities in a Western culture probably just doesn't matter. Western and Eastern nowadays, they've almost melded into one green coconut. See, Ramakrishna said, when the coconut's immature, it's all one solid substance. That's green coconut thinking. You don't know the difference between good and bad, right and wrong, Atman or Anatman. You don't know the difference. So you have to mature it, you see. Give yourself time to do that. Well, I'm jumping around a little bit here, but I'll take the ones that have headings, not just one-word headings, but explanations. There's one. Due to suffering in past lives, has developed some power of forbearance. That's a kind of medium samskara. You see people like that. You know, some people get sick and they fall apart. Other people get sick, oh, I'm okay. See? I mean, children are like that. I was like that. Get a cold, I'm still outside without a coat playing in the snow. Wet from the Portland rain, you know. My nose is running, I don't care. All this blood on my shirt sleeve, you see. So that's a mixed samskaric, you see. But it is developing forbearance in you. It'd be very good if forbearance was already in us. In fact, samo, dhammo, upuiti, titiksha, there it is, you see. The 6 jewels, it's the 4th. They say the yogi is impervious to hot and cold, to praise and slander, that kind of thing. So they've got that forbearance going on. Titiksha. Nice Sanskrit word. Here's a black one. Is vain and attached to surface beauty. Saying last week that, or actually in a conversation to someone, I think, recently. Yes, to my mechanic, who's a yogi kind of person. We're working on a car together recently, and he was telling me about the occult powers, the 8 occult powers. And I said, yeah, I stay away from them. And he said, you know, if you take the 8 occult powers from ancient India and bring them current, then, you know, they don't look any different really, except they're on a more collective level, like Mahima, you know, the power to be great. So look at what people are trying to do. Or beauty, you know, look at what the cosmetic industry is doing. They're practicing an occult power. Because you're not beautiful by most standards, and you're smearing yourself with stuff so that you'll look beautiful, so you're really telling a lie to everyone. See? Just accept me the way I am, man. See? Big nose and all. So these occult powers are, you know, even levitating. What are we doing now? We're flying around the world in airplanes. So you can bring all these 8 occult powers, asta, bala, sittas, forward and just see what people are doing with them. And if you look at the West, the world nowadays, it's all about occult power. You can't reach enlightenment if you even have one of the 8 occult powers. Who said that? Sri Krishna in the Gita told Arjuna that. You cannot reach enlightenment if you have even one of the 8 occult powers. As far as what Ramakrishna said about it, he said they're like crow droppings by the side of the road. Yeah, he wants you to stay away from them. He offered the occult powers that developed in him, because they develop in a yogi naturally. Because you know, well, it's hard to explain, but you talk about, you know, the 7 chakras. If you move through this chakra to this chakra, you're passing through a psychic prana kind of level, and that's where the occult powers are attracting people. So just by moving through them, you acquire them. Just like if you ran from this house to the next house on a rainy day, you'd acquire water, you see, wetness. But you wouldn't think anything of it, you'd just dry out, you see. But some people gravitate to that level and say, oh, occult powers, I'll stay there. So I'll take these to myself, I'll become powerful, I'll become beautiful, I'll exert influence over others, which is the problem the gods and goddesses have. And the demigods is exerting power over lokas and purveying all these lokas and holding counsel with all these souls that are their devotees. Worship, they want to be worshipped. So in this way, is vain and attached to surface beauty. That's one of the occult powers manifesting. Let's look at the rest of them. We said forgetful due to lack of study in a previous life. That's important because why is it neutral? You see, it's because if you want to remember, it's called smriti in Sanskrit. It's really huge in Sanskrit. Smriti rupena samstita, you know, we sing that all the time. Ya Devi sarva bhuteshu smriti rupena samstita namastasyai 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 namo namah. Ya Devi namo namaha. Ya Devi namo namaha. Ya Devi namo namaha. Ya Devi namo namaha. verse, you exist in the hearts and minds of all beings. That's memory. Smriti. So that's a huge thing in Sanskrit and in Indian philosophy. Reach the end of your life and you forget everything? What's that about? It's stored back in your subtle memory. If you want to remember it all in this life, then you work on the samskara of forgetfulness and you remove it. And then you can be like my teacher. Swami Sheshananda would recite the entire Gita by heart in his 90s while he served us prasad. See? Did he have a problem with forgetfulness? And when he passed from the body, is he going to forget the wisdom of the Gita ever again? See? So, it's just a little svadhyaya, you see. It's a little bit of practice, just a little putting it in your memory, and it's yours forever. And then just refresh it every day in meditation. This is why I say, working on the problem of a negative samskara, what's that about? How about developing a solution of the good samskara? You know what that's called in Vedanta? Pratipaksha bhavanam. Pratipaksha bhavanam. 7-syllable word, see, in Sanskrit. It means watering the flowers and not the weeds. And that's a great method. See. Concentrate on the Dharma alone, forget everything else for a while, and see what happens to you. Now, that's one level I can talk about, because that's what I've done since I was 20. I concentrated on the Dharma. See. And this is what happened to me 40 years later, 45 years later, you see. And he happened to me. Sri Ramakrishna, you see, happened to me. Because he could take teachings like this and go on forever. So take one little teaching and expand on it for months, they said. So, this is what comes to mind when I say forgetful due to lack of study in a previous life. Make this lifetime the lifetime that you destroy forgetfulness forever. That you make ignorance ignorant of itself. See? That you make fear afraid of itself. That you put death in its own grave. See? How Swami Sheshananda used to say it. Make doubt itself. So whatever you need to do that. And then develop that samskara of remembrance. See? Those things that are important for you to remember, hang on to them. Those things that are unnecessary, get rid of them. See, isn't that viveka? The real, the unreal, the essential, the non-essential, the nitya and the lila, you see. Now, what else here? Has potential for intellectual acumen, which is a good thing. As I said, that intellectual acumen is there, called daksha, intelligence. If the guru sees it in the aspirant that's approaching, good, you see. Like people used to come to Sri Ramakrishna by the boatloads. See? They pull up to the ghat at Kali temple, go up, go see Mother Kali or whatever, and then go to Sri Ramakrishna's room and see the Paramahamsa. And he'd meet with them, look at them all. And he'd say, okay, well you two, you three, why don't you go see the sights in the temple? You stay here with me. See? He was invariably doing that. Because he was looking at these three, and they were just there to see the sights. No intellectual acumen. But this person showed signs of awakening in this lifetime. He probably saw that, as I said, before they even entered the room. As he opened the door, he looked at their features. And then he also talked with a little bit of them, and then confirmed it, you see. Now you stay here with me. How do you think a lot of the 16 direct disciples stayed with him? You see, when he came. Got in a pushing match with one of them once, who was big, strong. I said, you're a strong, tall man, especially for a Hindu. You push me. What, master? I won't lay my hands on you. No, come on, push me. I want to have a pushing match, you see. And so he pushed him, and they started pushing, and the young man pushed the master right up against the wall. And then Sri Ramakrishna looked at him and smiled, and then his whole limbs That is, the young disciple's name just went limp. All his prana was drained away. And Sri Ramakrishna said, come again. Basically, come again. I want to see you again. So, Brahmanandam Shivam Shantam Premarupam Naranjanam Yogisham Adbhutam Nityam Akandadvaita Lakshinam Vijnanam Trigunatitam Turya Beda Samgitam Subodham Shardam Chaiva Viveka Shashi Bhushanam. And then Samanvaya Mahacharya Yugadharma Swarupinam Sarvadeva Swarupam Shri Ramakrishna Namamyaham. Beautiful chant composed by a Swami who was not a Swami of the Ramakrishna order, for the Ramakrishna order, when he thought of the beautiful Leela or play of Sri Ramakrishna and the direct disciples. Yeah. Like Christ's apostles, like Buddha's Noble Eight, Ramakrishna had those 16 beautiful young souls. Not all of them were young, but most of them came to him young. Oh, there's one that I like to bring up. There's a remembrance in that mind of drowning in a past life, so they're afraid of water. The simplest things can be explained by samskaras. In anyone. I had 2 dogs. We had 2 dogs, labs. One female, one male. The female would jump in the most ferocious waves in Hawaii. You know, the shore break kind you don't want to go in. If you threw a coconut out there, green or otherwise, mature or immature, that dog would jump in that wave and find that coconut. If it were a placid day and you threw a coconut in, the male would not go in. Go up to the head of the water, look, go, retreat. So what is that, you see? Fear, yes, that's a basic definition and description, but this is some samskara of this dog drowned in its past lifetime, or nearly drowned. I had another dog which I rescued from a sewer. It was big sewers. I was walking in a backwoods, see, and there's this big waste processing plant, cement thing, open, you see, and this big stirrer, stirring the muck, you see. And this samoyed had fallen in there, white dog, it was all black now. And I reached in and I picked it up and pulled it out, took it home, washed it off, and owned it for a couple of years before it took off. But probably had a good samskara about not wanting to be born in feces ever again. I'll use the F word instead of the S word. So it explains a lot about human beings too. Afraid of fire, afraid of water, afraid of landslides, fear of whatever. See, just look back in your samskaras and remember, and it'll be a good thing for you, because you can get over it in this lifetime. Otherwise it tends to be a rusty nail that could be a part of that samskara skanda that is troubling you right now. See, I mean, we talk about samskaras, there's not just gross things, there are some very subtle things that bother people. And they're intricate, you see. They're a little tiny, subtle bucket of rusty nails, see. But the more subtle it is, as we said here, the harder it is to detect. And it could be such things as backsliding, or taking one step forward and falling 2 steps back, is being caused by that. And you can locate the problem, but you can't locate the cause for the problem. Oh, I'm backsliding. Congratulations. I knew that about you months ago, you see. But what about the solution for it? Can you get to that and apply it? That's very important. So I think here is kind and generous. It's a good samskara. Born with physical problems that worsen as age sets in. That's kind of black, isn't it? We see that in people. Race and culture, social status, those are, again, flat line, kind of given to everyone, depends on what you do with them. Now there in the middle is a samskara skanda that I've defined in an unusual way. It consists of conventional beliefs. You'd be surprised how that keeps people down. Belief in matter, and so forth, as being the only reality. Parental and gender issues, that gets more into the psyche of the human being. Tendency to brood and worry, one of the worst wastes of time possible in human life is to brood. And you just need to knock that samskara right out of you and just water the flowers, you see. Inability to love or be loved. That would be, the heart kind of idea. You've got mind, you've got heart, and you've got body right there in the first 3 or 4. Then fear, especially of death. Abhinivesha, father of yoga, calls it. It's the 5th and lowest, but it's the 5th of the 5 impediments to spiritual life called kleshas. And it's the 5th and lowest and darkest and deepest hell you can fall into, is to be afraid of death. Interesting teaching. He calls it clinging to life. Abhinivesha really translates as clinging to life. So you're clinging to life even when you're in an old, decrepit body. You see. What to speak of young, healthy body, or a body that has physical problems that worsen as age sets in. But what the case is, you've got this death grasp on body, matter, atomic particle, whatever it is that you are grasping onto and won't let go. So that is a part of this samskara skandha for this particular mind complex. And finally, animalistic tendencies. We're talking about the children of Hawaii and so forth lately, and children that we grew up with even. And seems like there is more problem. Well, there's more people, so there would be, but more problems with mental challenged kids and retardation and so forth, as they call it. So this animalistic tendency we see a lot in the kids being born in that run of human being. See, like example of one person does everything with the tongue. One little kid, no matter what it is, puts it to his tongue. Let's see, could he have been an anteater in a previous lifetime? You see, what is it? See, that he's sensing his whole world just with his tongue. And other strange aberrations like that you could just kind of look at, and just see an animal. Like crawling around on 4 legs all the time and won't walk. What's that about? See, hands and knees won't get up. One kid crawled to the bus that way. See, across the pavement and all. See, see. So it causes you to think. So when we say samskaras in the human mind that still reflect animal tendencies, like say, gee, I think I'll put a bunch of perfume on before I go to that party. See, that's an animalistic tendency. I have a kind of a smell, you see, so I'm going to cover that up, or I'm going to attract the other species with this smell, you see. What'd you do? As they say, did you take a bath in that cologne? So these things that are seemingly human tendencies really come off as some sort of reflection of an animalistic samskara. A remembrance, because mind, smriti again, is very important. You not only have remembrance of divine things, but as you come further out into body, then your memories become more pronounced about physical things. And that's the problem with worship of matter, materialism and so forth, is that you have all this potential back inside of you, but you're not doing anything to let it come out. And then you could say karmas and samskaras are 2 watchwords which are keeping these divine potentials from coming out of people. So here we have to take a break. So we'll take 15 minutes, we'll show the live streaming audience these charts, and come back after we take a little prasad in about 15 minutes. Thank you all for your kind attentions. In the second half of our class, of our final class on neutralizing karma and samskaras, we've been entertaining that idea all along, or that axiom or truism, that just by hearing with full attention, with mind and focused, if thine eye be single kind of focused, that you are attenuating karmas and samskaras right away. It's not something that you have to wait for, so it's sort of like a post-mortem emancipation or something. You can be free right now from these things, and really the whole trick of it is that, as we chanted to begin with, ignorance is unreal, so how can it cause any real doubt? How can ignorance cause any real samskaras? The whole thing's unreal to begin with, so you're entertaining the idea that it's real. You should start entertaining the idea that it's not, and that they are not, and therefore see through them and be free. People in India used to come up to Swamiji and would say, that is Vivekananda, and say, he'd talk with him about freedom. He said, "Oh Swami, it's not possible for me because I have so many karmas and so many lifetimes yet." And he would actually get very stern and yell at them and say, "Blast your karmas, blast your samskaras, be free, wake up now." So he knew that freedom was a matter of the eternal moment, and you have to live in the eternal moment. If you live in the eternal moment, then everything that happened in 3 phases of time starts to lose its grip on you, because it never was real. Since you are living in that sense of time, space, cause and effect, name and form, Maya being real, then that's where you're staying, so that's what you'll be living in. But now you just decide to vacate the premises, as they say, and take up the non-dual position and not entertain any of that anymore. You might sound a little impractical, but that was one of Sri Ramakrishna's favorite tacks with people who were at that level, that they could have enough power and will to do that. People who were weak and so forth, it's probably not the best teaching, and for that he would say, it's not good to give them the Advaitic teachings. But people who could practice a method, a method of the mind like that, and he would definitely advise that kind of stance, non-dual stance in people, and they would come to realize the difference between the real and the relative. Relativity, reality. And by taking the force away from relativity, it would show itself up to be empty, as the Buddhists call it, shunyata. It doesn't have any substance. It doesn't really have any bearing. It doesn't have any influence over you that you don't allow. So it's very ennobling and very invigorating and immediate kind of attraction to the mind of human beings, especially those who are caught in those problems of samskara skandhas, as subtle as they can get. Now, before we finish the chart, let's read this final quote down here from Sri Ramakrishna, because I actually get a good laugh over it quite often when I think about it. It's a story he tells. The son of a king was fond of playing with his royal playmates. There's this little boy, and he lives at the castle, and he's playing with his little friends who are also sons of princes and dukes and so forth. One day, as they were playing swords, the prince suddenly said, "I want to play a new game. I'll lay down, and all of you must beat me over the back with these cloths and robes, making a swishing sound as you do." So where is this coming from? So Sri Ramakrishna is talking about samskaras from a past lifetime. As he goes on to say, you see, in his last lifetime, the prince had been the son of a washerman. And that's how you got clothes cleaned. If you were a washerman, you beat them on the backs of your children or on rocks or whatever was there. You see. And that swishing sound happened as you did. You see. So you got used to that all your life and became part of your love of life. That part of the work you did, part of what you lived for every day was to go and so you've got a strong samskara there from your last lifetime, which kind of blows to pieces a lot of these ideas that once a king, always a king, or that it's very possible that as you get into the lower strata of life in the world, in the human body, that yes, once a lawyer, always a lawyer, that can happen, or once a doctor, always a doctor. You have some scars from past lifetimes that follow. Like Ramakrishna would also give the teaching, the fruit doesn't fall very far from the tree kind of idea, those good variety Bombay mangoes that you get, you'd say, you only get them in certain seasons, but they come from good trees. So there is that like attracts like, but there's also this very stultifying thing, and this is actually more, I think, prevalent or more pertinent to the problems that we're having if we're not taught the Dharma, which is our main problem here in the West, I'd say. Our founder, Lex Hickson, and I both agreed when we met. He was in his 30s, I was in my 20s. We talked about how religion with a capital R, as Swami Vivekananda put it, was the only solution for the world to get out of ignorance and suffering. But it had to be this religion that was with a capital R, not the kind that was being peddled for so many centuries or even millennia in both India and the West. Brahmin priest problem, Christian priest problem. This is the priestcraft, Vivekananda said. There's a lot of problem in that. So thinking about that and talking in that vein, we were often mentioning this idea of as ignorance exacerbates over generations, then you start having this problem of not knowing who your children are and why they're acting the way they are. When in ancient times it was at least known, if you act that way, it means you had a lifetime of such and such. They could pinpoint it. That was yoga psychology. It wasn't Western psychology based on a couple hundred years. It was yoga psychology based on thousands of years of raising children in the Dharma. And certainly there were people who took to the Dharma and people who didn't, even in old India. But here, none of us are taking to the Dharma. That's the problem, you see. We don't know the word Dharma. In fact, we don't really think about enlightenment or freedom from nature. Freedom from nature is not a concept we entertain. Kaivalya, which is like the penultimate highest word in Sanskrit and yoga, freedom from nature, freedom from form, I have no idea what that's about, except in deep sleep tonight. See, and we don't come back with any inkling of what that is, what happened to us, or what didn't happen to us. Because out here is what's happening to us. See? And there, nothing's happening to us, and we're very fine, thank you very much, you see. Come out of deep sleep, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, you're good to go for 24 hours. Dream all night for 8 hours, you're a nervous wreck for the rest of the day, you see. So deep sleep has that reflection that's so unique, and must be good to be without a form. But to be without a form consciously, Vivekananda said, it may be very good that when I get out of my body I'll feel absolutely free. See? But I will not stop working. I'll take a form 1,000 times if I can help others. I'm paraphrasing him. I'll take 1,000 births if I can help just one being get out of ignorance. I think that's more specifically what he said. So I end the chart belatedly a little bit here after the break is already over. With that nice story about Sri Ramakrishna and the son of a washerman who is the son of a king. That can happen to us with our children or even with our friends. It doesn't have to be just our children. People can all of a sudden become aware of their past lifetimes. We call it déjà vu and so forth, and maybe that doesn't go very deep. But if we were grounded in the Dharma, it would go deep, and it would be deep all the time. Instead of being knee-deep in the muck, you would be knee-deep and neck-deep in the Dharma, maybe. See? So that, the second half of last week's class and the first half of this week's class have been given specifically to the subject of samskara. Karma, a little bit easier to understand and take the teachings on. Samskaras, I crafted these two charts for that express purpose, that we would look at them and really become aware of them as being causing the propensity for rebirth and all of these things too that we need to look at, so that we can trace all of what's happening to us back to a solid cause, not kind of foggy thinking around this. We have to accept this and champion it and practice it. And we know that this is what's causing our problem. And that will be for our highest good. Now, here, let's go to this chart on points about Brahman and also the palette of future lives, conscious future lives, which I put together recently for a retreat on the same subject. We were looking at rebirth. So it's not that karma and samskaras can ever be disconnected from the subject of rebirth, but you can concentrate on rebirth as its own subject and just leave out these subtle causes and effects. But let's look here first at these points. There's actually two charts of this nature. One's called Principles of Brahman, and this is called Points about Brahman. The principles form a tower of truth. You might have seen that chart in the past. Some of you have been with me long enough over the last few years to see these 275 charts that I put together in the last several years for visuals. We have not only audible teachings, but we have the visuals to put with them. That'll bring at least two of our senses together in cooperation and in the mind, so that we can make some headway. In fact, it'll lodge itself in the smriti, won't it? In our memory. These things come up, we'll remember these teachings and hopefully give them to our friends and our children. Now, I mentioned already individual level of things, but this chart deals with the collective individual and the cosmic. I've put these two together in one. As far as levels of mind, or sometimes they call the three worlds, peace, 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 and so forth, these three levels of consciousness, or however you want to put it, is sometimes put in terms of gross, subtle, and causal, other times put in terms of individual, collective, and cosmic. Depends on what period of India and its scriptures of that period you're studying in any given sit, or any given study, or any given class. But if we start with cosmic, and this is pertaining more to samskaras at a very grand level, like the samskaras of Lord Brahma and Lord Vishnu and Lord Shiva. Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshwara, Guru Eva Param Brahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah. So Guru Brahma, Lord Brahma, Guru Vishnu, and Devo Maheshwara means Shiva. So that trinity is there. That's the cosmic level of things. When we talk about cosmos in the West, we're looking up in space. That's our only cosmos. You see, we're a part of it, this little Earth spinning, a mud ball spinning through space. The cosmos to us, if we use that word, reflects just the physical universe of matter. But when they say cosmic in India, in Indian philosophy, they mean something that's a part of the mind, or as I would say, the kingdoms of heaven within you are really the cosmos that Christ would have talked about. And if you haven't seen them or know about them, then you should go to the Garden of Gethsemane and start meditating on them, because that's what you do when you're with a Christ. You go meditate and you find out the roots, the origins of things. If you don't have knowledge of origins, utpatti, then you might as well be cosmologically, philosophically, and intellectually up a stream without a paddle, you see. And that's why we are having to borrow from India philosophy, or we are having to borrow from the Tao, or we are having to borrow from Buddhism, or we are having to borrow from Greek and Rome if we have to go there, because they have a cosmology and they have a philosophy, and it has been developed over some centuries. In case of India, millennia. And in case of India, eternally, actually. Sanatana Dharma means the eternal truth, the eternal religion. So they've really grasped onto religion and made that their whole pole star, their mainstay for all of this history. If you look at it historically, linearly, as we were saying. But when you talk about the cosmos, then you talk about Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, and you talk about samskaras that are much, much more refined, or maybe even absent. So let's look at this. One of the main axioms or pillars of India is this beautiful truth of a Jativada. There is no creation. There is no evolution. Talk about replacing old samskaras for new. New lamps for old, new lamps for old. You're going around philosophically here giving you a new lamp to burn, and maybe you can get rid of the old one or just polish it off a bit of the tarnish and look at it in a new way. We say no creation as a samskara or a mental impression in the mind of God, called the Mahat in Samkhya, or the Trinity in Vedic times. Then you're talking about this move, the demiurge. There's really no word again you can think of that isn't maybe Roman or Greek that expresses to you this idea of the initial separation of the soul from divine reality. You know, the first taking on of a form. That form wouldn't be a body, not a gross body. It would be a causal body or a subtle body. But that's the idea with this coming out of the idea of no creation possible. Then you'd see that everything is a projection in stages. And I'm holding up this Y because it happens in fives. 5 this, 5 that, all the way out, as we've talked about before, the quintuplication process, or pancha karana. Read your Panchadasi if you want to know more about that. We have a retreat on that actually coming up in Portland. Panchadasi and Panchakarana it's called. It's in actually Washington, but near Portland. It's in March. So march right over there. Learn about these series of fives. So no creation, no evolution. We would call it mental projection and withdrawal. So that all happens in a 24-hour period for you. You can you wake up, dream, go to sleep, come back to dream, come back to waking, and you've done like one, evolution, involution on yourself without even knowing it. I surprised myself here. Everything I knew, everything I am, everything I don't know I am, everything I'm not, has marched forward and returned in 24 hours. And if you're really conscious, you can do it in 1 minute. Just breathe in, hold, and breathe out. And you've done the same thing again. You've put everything into creation, you've stilled it, and then you've brought it back in and destroyed it. Or brought it back in and dissolved it would be a better word. See? You've projected with the out-breath, you've sustained with the held breath, and with the in-breath you've brought it all back in. So whether you look at it in a period of a minute or two, or a 24-hour day, or a yuga, or a mahayuga, or a manvantara, these cycles of time that Buddha talked about, then you begin to suspect all of a sudden that you can't create something out of nothing, that I got all of this from somewhere, and that somewhere is eternal. It's not going through cycles like I am. I'm drawing from it because it is eternal, and all of this came out of that. Purnamadaha, Purnamidam, Purnamadachate. It's the old 7 peace chants that many of you have memorized already. From the infinite, the finite has come, yet being infinite, only infinite remains. So everything you're drawing from is unmanifested prakriti, and it becomes manifested prakriti. That is, the bulk of the ice becomes the tip, and you don't see the bulk. And then the tip becomes liquid again by the sun's heat, adds to the bulk, pushes up more tip. And this is always going on all the time with icebergs. So this round of birth and death is just like that. This waking, dreaming, deep sleep is just like that. This in-breath, held breath, out-breath is just like that. All happening in one eternal moment, which is now. Oh, there it went. Slipped by. Then a moment passed. Then another moment passed. Goodness, another moment passed just now. So you have to stop, cease and be still. If Divine Mother says that to you with that bijam, hum, it means cease and be still, the whole battlefield stops raging. There'll be nothing going on. lights, camera, in action, as we say in Vedanta. So a little bit about this illusion of creation and evolution. Also, the Mahat, I mentioned it just now, cosmic mind projects the universe. That pretty much puts it in a nutshell. Yagya, the cosmos proceeds via sacrifice. Ask Sri Krishna to tell you about that, or read the Gita, how rain, there's the Vedas, and from that sacrifice and rain comes, and then the offerings, and the whole thing is going on in this Vedic circle of things, which is a circle of ritual, it's a circle of sacrifice called yagya. And Krishna says, if you don't have yagya, then you're a non-entity. There's no place for you in this world, and there's no place for you in the next world without sacrifice. It is the thief who takes and doesn't give back. Yeah, I mean, these are slokas in the Gita that you'll find if you read that. Shrishti Rahasya, now we move to Tantra. That's their way of saying the secret of creation. The secret of creation is everything has come from the Word. And Christ was trying to teach that to John, and John wasn't quite getting it. But nevertheless, this has been there in India since the earliest time. Om, we call it, A-U-M, which stands for what? Waking, dreaming, deep sleep, what else? Creation, preservation, destruction, past, present, future, in-breath, held breath, out-breath. This is what we were saying. The triputis that are A-U-M of Om. Probably the most, I'd say, powerful one to meditate is waking, dreaming, deep sleep. That's how the Advaitists put it. They'll give you the teachings of the fives. It's a part of Vedanta, but they want you to get to this idea of the three, waking, dreaming, deep sleep, and then tuck that all back into this Turiya state, which is formless samadhi, conscious samadhi. Conscious future lives will come out of that. Now that's a beautiful term, Shrishti Rahasya, the secret of creation. Samsara, you must see that creation is attended by suffering. That's the first noble truth of Buddhism. If you don't accept that, you can't be a Buddhist. And there are people walking around calling themselves Buddhists who are acting like suffering doesn't exist. Where's your compassion then? There's nothing to have compassion for if suffering doesn't exist. Suffering doesn't exist ultimately, and you can prove that to yourself. But you can't overlook it like that. Samsara, that wheel of samsara is turning. You just want to get yourself off of it. So remember, I'm talking about all these in terms of cosmic samskaras. We've talked about the individual mind, brain complex, and what lodges in there. And we have to connect this up to the collective mind to understand why not just my son is acting that way, or my daughter, or my friend, due to a samskara, but why my whole race is acting that way. Like, for instance, conventional beliefs. Matter only, you see. Not thinking outside of the box of one lifetime. A penchant for rebirth all the time. Fear of death at the same time. How can you have in your mind, see, a desire to be reborn, but yet fear death? How do those two exist at the same time in you that make any sense at all, you see? So why do cultures act the way they do? That would happen more by understanding samskaras at this kind of level. What else is there to look at? Sarvam prane ejati. Prana, gross to subtle, pervades everything. And speaking of Jesus, we probably would look into his saying, man does not live by bread alone. He's not talking about the eternal Father there, because there's nothing but eternal life in the Father. When you're talking about man does not live by bread alone, you're talking about living by an energy. That is, you say, I live by food, but it's really the energy in the food that you live by, isn't it? And you want to make sure both the food and the energy are pure, then you can really live. I mean, that's not just health food fascism that we're going through now, but it's the missing element in Kundalini Yoga that teachers of the 60s who came over from India were not giving you. You see, they were teaching you body postures and breathing exercises. They left food completely out of the quotient. Or if they put food in at all, it was eat well, kind of idea. or eat vegetarian. But it wasn't eat pure. There are 5 kinds of defect in food, and at least 3 of them come from the mind. See? I cannot eat this food and do something else at the same time. You see, but that's mixing. I must concentrate on my food when I eat. I can't eat food that's been cooked by somebody who's reading a murder mystery and then comes to work and cooks my food and feeds me, because then I'm taking on murder, you see. I mean, all these things they're called shuddhis, or purifications, and that's all samskaric. So have a samskara for eating bad food, or a samskara for being a vegetarian. That's because it was that way before, you see. I have a beautiful Hindu friend, he's a family man. He said, in my family, my kids, I just let them make the choice. When they were young, I put meat on the table. The ones that took it, they wanted to eat meat. There were some that just wouldn't take it. That's samskara right there. See? I mean, in the Old Testament it says no human ever ate meat until the flood. See, basically that's teeth weren't meant to eat meat. You weren't meant to eat meat. So when the flood came, you couldn't get food. Then you started eating fish and other things, and you had to survive. So I mean, there's of course teachings in Jainism which are more extreme, teachings in Buddhism about vegetarianism, Hinduism about vegetarianism, and so forth and so on. Confucianism, Taoism. So, it's not a moral teaching where, you're going to go to hell if you eat meat, or everything's going to be bad for you, but you are taking on a karma for eating meat. That's just plain fact, you see. And you're skipping that karma if you don't, except maybe on the collective level, when your whole culture is eating meat, you see. And you have to go against the grain. See? How can you help but come up against it? If you're a Vivekananda, no problem. Sri Krishna said he can go to other countries and eat anything he wants. Nothing's going to hurt him. See? So that's a whole different level of power there. It's a Shakti power. So something about prana. We've given whole retreats on prana. In fact, Sri Krishna said 2 things are missing right now in the Western consciousness, prana and tanmatra. Of those sets of 5s, what you don't know about is the 5 pranas and the 5 tanmatras. 5 pranas are, man does not live by bread alone. What's happening to you, not only in the body, but psychic prana in the mind, energy. You only know about material energy, kinetic energy, electric energy. You don't know anything about this life force energy. And tanmatras, the 5 elements as they appear to you in dream, for instance. That you go into another realm and you leave earth, air, fire, water alone, and ether, and you take on other sources of those 5 elements, the tanmatras. These gross elements came out of the subtle elements. It's not the other way around, nor is it that only the gross elements exist. And that's the 2 mistakes you would make, philosophically and cosmologically, if you believe that. Oh, there is no such thing as subtle elements. That's what he's saying. You don't know about the tanmatras. Or, I've considered about the gross elements. They say they've come out of something more subtle. I don't accept it, you see. So, out of the subtle, the gross has come. And before the subtle, there was the causal. And before the causal, there was the word. And that's been taught since time out of mind in several different religions. I've found mention of the word in 7 different religions, and third eye too, in about 6 or 7 different religions, scriptures of the world, not just India. I have a chart on that. Hardly wait to show you. All right, let's look at the collective. Pancha Yagya, sacrifice is your first duty. Most parents know that, who are raising children in the right way, what a sacrifice that is. So the householder is not unfamiliar with sacrifice. But again, as we see time advance, we see there are parents who are less involved with their children, who are not involved in the hands-on raising of children, teaching them, or even caring much for them. Just route them off to school, and they come home, set them to their homework or in front of the TV. I don't have anything to do with them. Well, Christ said your children weren't your own. They were souls given to you to guide. So better, if you had them, you're their guide. You're going to leave them in the lurch, or you're going to guide them. Remember in the early days when Swami in India, southern India, said, "Oh, I see you're the guru of all these Westerners. Very good. If you're going to do that, though, guide them well. Guide them well. If you take on that task, make sure you do the job." Sri Ramakrishna even used to do that. Let's see, to have children and hope that the neighbors will raise them? What's that about, he said. Guru moksha. Guru is required for liberation. Famous quote by Vivekananda about that. He says that you cannot get freedom, liberation from books or from temples. You can only get it from another soul. Only get it from another soul. You won't get it anywhere else. Find yourself a teacher, apprentice yourself to that teacher, get the transmission, light your torch, and be free. Then pass it on. That's Guru Parampara. Doesn't it sound like trumpets going off? Parampara. You see, this is the way out of bondage. Krishna says in the last chapter of the Gita, practically the last sloka, as does Vashishta in Lord Vashishta's book, those who give jnanam to the world are my true devotees. There is no higher devotee than those who give wisdom as sacrifice. Yagya. The wisdom sacrifice frees you from bondage like nothing else. Lower wisdom will satisfy for a little while, higher wisdom forever. Whose website is that on? Annapurna's. You see that at the end of all her messages she sends to you. What's SRV doing this week? Next month. And at the beginning, lower knowledge satisfies for just a little while, higher wisdom forever. That's Vivekananda's saying. So that's aparavid and paravid. There is a distinction, there is a difference, there is a higher level. Do we know that here in the West? Or are we just involved in intellectual things alone, you see? We've got a samskara for intelligence. That is probably not even intelligence, but just intellect, because intelligence is the actual essence, intellect is the container. So if you fill your container with a little knowledge and call it mine, then that's about as far as you'll go, you see. It's my knowledge, and it's better than yours. And I have a lot of it, more than you. You can't limit it like that. Sri Ramakrishna used to say, when they said, "Oh, you know so much, where did you get this? You're unlearned, you're unlettered, you didn't go to school." He said, "I don't know anything about it. I just know Mother Saraswati sits in my throat and pushes out wisdom. I just open my mouth." See? So talk about egoless methods. So get yourself a teacher. Atmagyan harchayet, that is, illumined beings are teachers of men. Rishi Jnana Triptaha, the masterful, the attained, and the aspiring. 3 levels of illumined soul that you're going to look at. That would be good to look at. See? There's past masters, there's those who are very attained, that is adepts, and then there's those who are aspiring. You should probably know the difference between these so that you can apprentice the masterful. Vikshepa bandha. Ignorance veils self-realization. Like smoke veils a fire, like the embryo veils, the womb veils the embryo, just like that, Arjuna, ignorance covers wisdom. So he didn't say anything about wisdom being destroyed or not being there. It's just the covering power of Maya. And you need to blow that smoke away or be born. See, leave the womb. Leave the womb right now. Go find a womb with a view. So So ignorance only veils. That's the beautiful thing about Vedanta. It's not original sin we're looking at. It's just this root ignorance called avidya, mula vidya, root ignorance, or avidyamaya. It's only a matter of veiling or vivarta, false superimposition. Prabhavananda gave out that teaching quite a lot. He liked the idea of, and Nikhilananda too, they liked that idea of, here's a word for you, meditate on this word, vivarta. Also adhyasa means veiling or false superimposition. And look at it not only on the individual level and collective, but look at it at the cosmic level. How does it relate there? It means that when Lord Brahma, the Mahat, the Trinity we were just singing about, when he projected the universe, then form came into being and it covered formlessness. That's cosmic false superimposition. We just said Lord Brahma's projection is a projection. So a projection is not real. He's the projector, that's his movie, and the screen is Brahman. See, Brahman never changed, the projection is changing, and it gets withdrawn, and then you've got the projector itself, which is the firstborn, Lord Brahma, and his 10 mind-born sons, like Lord Vashishta. That's all, cosmology. But the point here being then that, this if there's even the slightest inkling of form, then formlessness has been covered, and that's false. Formlessness is the essence, and form is the covering power. And for us in the West out here, form is the only reality. Deha jasa hamkara. Deha, body, ajasa, false superimposition, ahamkara, ego. Everything has been covered by the ego and form. See, I'm just an ego walking around in a body. And that's covering the truth of that I'm formless reality. That I'm the soul, or with a capital S, Atman. I don't transmigrate. I'm in one position all the time, like Shiva. Now, we're going through these rather quickly, but we haven't seen this chart for a long, long time. Some of you might have never seen it, but it's very good to, these points again bring up a whole set of Dharma teachings that you can meditate on. And we are trying to keep our mind on the Dharma, right? In this case, for 3 hours. See, I'll give you the t-shirt later. I survived Babaji's. Well, sadhu sangha, or sometimes called sadhu satsanga, holy company is a necessity. Sadhu satsanga is one of the 4 sentinels that Lord Vashishta gave to us. Go get holy company right away. You'll know what to do and what not to do if you... it's like the story Sri Ramakrishna told. Elephant driver comes out of his hut, climbs up his elephant, gets on, and drives it right out the driveway. Like we would get in a car, you see. He's on top of his elephant, just moves right out into the street, you see. And as he goes by his neighbor's house, he can see everything. So he looks down, sees his neighbor working the garden. Hi! So they start talking, he leans on the gate, you see, and on his elephant, just like leaning out of your Cadillac or something, you see, talking with his neighbor. So meanwhile, the elephant's like standing there kind of bored, sees his neighbor's banana tree with ripe plantains on it. So he sticks out his trunk, to grab that and eat it. And without even missing a word of a sentence, the elephant driver just takes his goad and smacks the elephant on the trunk. And the elephant withdraws his trunk. That's the story. What does it mean? It means get holy company and you'll know what not to do. See? It's the master's elaborate way of teaching you about sadhu satsanga, you see. And then you'll know what to do as well. So you're going to have that as an example. He gave all sorts of teachings. He thought it was very important. Like, he gave a teaching the dinosaurs, remember? Look what happened to the dinosaurs, he said, by keeping company of the earth. See? He was talking about holy company. If you don't keep company of holy, and you keep company of the earth, world, then you turn into fossils, basically. Oil, eventually. Probably the cause of all sorts of collective karma, by being oil, you see. But the dinosaurs always had their attention focused on the earth, so they became earth. That's what he's saying. So those are the teachings he would give out about holy company. Just kind of surprising teachings for the Hindus of that day, you see. Taking village stories, things that happened every day to people, and just putting God into them. As if God wasn't there in the first place, you see. But they just weren't looking at it that way. That's how to convert poison into nectar. Shiva does that, you see. Knows how to convert poison into nectar. That is the poison of mundane human convention into the amrit, the nectar of truth. Shanti Shraddha Amrita. See, peace, purity, faith, and nectar of truth. See, they covet that more than anything. But remember, holy company is a necessity, but shishyachara, seekers must be qualified. I'm starting to think about all Ramakrishna's stories now. Pardon me, but he said if you feed a pigeon peas and corn, you see, it eats them, you see. But then you pick up the pigeon, it's friendly, you see, you pick it up and you start petting it, and you realize that all the peas and corn stuck in its crop, see. What does he mean? It didn't go down to the stomach to get digested. So people go to teachers unqualified. They can hear the most grand philosophy in the three worlds from Lord Brahma himself and never digest it, you see. They're like pigeons with everything stored in their crop and no digestion going on. This is how the master would teach, you see. It's actually quite funny. You probably see some pretty wide eyes among these brown-skinned people. Like, I never thought of that, you see. I was feeding the pigeons just the other day. Shishyacharya, that's qualification is king, as Vivekananda used to say. Sadhana. Sadhana leads to liberation. There's the Jain ladder that we've been working on. Swami Brahmeshananda, salutations if you're watching. Swami Brahmeshananda gave us this beautiful series of discourses on Jainism. You see, we've been putting him in Nectar of Non-Dual Truth. This chart he put in recently was this Jain ladder of ascension. He's talking about the first one or two stages of a person awakening from ignorance and then getting into practice. So on the chart there's this, all three of these stages I've just described to you happen in ignorance. The rest of these 7 stages all happen due to the will, due to self-effort. So self-effort, non-self-effort. It's just as plain as it can be, just as cut and dried as it can possibly be. Is that if you do sadhana, you'll get the fruits of sadhana. If you don't, then you'll stay attached to everything that you're attached to all the time. And it'll dictate your samskaras. That's why people are born worldly, evil-minded, and so forth. God didn't choose that for them. That's ridiculous. Don't bring God into that mess. Abhyasa yoga. Atman is attained by constant practice. Right out of the Gita, right? I don't understand. The mind is like a rent cloud. It's fickle. It can't be controlled. Yes, Arjuna, that's right, but it can be controlled by Abhyasa yoga, the yoga of constant practice. So start your practice right away. Renew it every day. Keep it up. Perseverance, Holy Mother said. She liked the P's. Practice, perseverance, purity. Aparavidya, we already had that really, and we talked about it, didn't we? Paravidya and aparavidya means higher and lower knowledge. Be aware of that. The true knowledge transcends rites and rituals. It's the way it's put here. Beyond the ritualist is the yogi, Krishna says in the Gita. Be thou a yogi, Arjuna. Nishkama karma. Only scriptural ordained works bring freedom. You can work yourself out Vivekananda has those famous quotes that I always use, right? He says basically, work is a morbid dream. It's all right for a little while as a duty, but then it becomes a morbid dream. And Shankara says, you will never get enlightenment by hundreds and thousands of acts, nor millions of asanas, or breathing exercises. You'll never get enlightenment. So this is more toward the point. Take the scripturally ordained works and do those, and give up all rest. It's a natural viveka, a discrimination amongst, kind of a karma yoga teaching, that you would do that. It's weeding the weeds from the flowers. Think about that. If you want to put it very basically, what would God want me to do? What would God not want me to do? Or Jesus, or Buddha, or anyone else. And if you don't know, then go back and get holy company and start qualifying yourself. This isn't just unrelated stuff I'm throwing at you. This is our own ladder of ascension in the three worlds: gross, subtle, and causal. Individual, collective, and cosmic. This is you. These are the three states of your consciousness. If you want to get beyond them, if you're not happy with them, there's a way to do that too. A non-dual reality. Advaita Vedanta. Chit Shuddhi, purification of mind, is the way. And how many different kinds of purifications are there? There's purification of place, put up an altar, purify it. There's purification of act, and then there's purification of mind. If you had the first, the other two wouldn't be necessary. Everything would be pure, you see. Sri Ramakrishna said, pure mind is God. Lord Buddha said, pure mind is Buddha mind. So most people are having to go from the outside in. See, let's get the location first. See, things have gotten out of hand. Make the children be quiet at certain times of the day, whatever. Purify, eat my food quietly instead of reading a murder mystery, I think I'll read it. I think I'll eat my food reading a scripture. No, it's even worse. Eat your food eating your food. See, read the scripture on its own. That's a different kind of food. See, are you going to cook a dinner and eat it in the toilet? See, indiscriminate action. You see, might be more efficient in the long run, but not going to work. See. All right. Indriya Shuddhi. Pure senses help reveal the self. So Sri Ramakrishna, you know his teaching. When you have God realization, you get love eyes, love ears, love taste, love tongue. See? So he was talking about pure senses revealing the self. Penultimately here, dhyan. Meditation. Brahman is revealed via meditation. You're going to want to practice that most subtle of all arts. Of the four yogas, meditation is probably the latest to fructify and the hardest to attain. I mean, karma yoga is no doubt hard. Jnana yoga is hard but swift. Bhakti yoga is the nice path to the slow boat to China, see, or to India in this case. But meditation is indeed very, very subtle, very difficult. Usually the last of the seventh limb of yoga, before you get samadhi, it's the last to mature. So, but Brahman gets revealed by that, and probably by no other way except by grace. Take grace out of the quotient, what's going to give you the non-dual vision? Karma vinasha. Karma has its end in realization. Vinasha means destroyed. And that's a good way to end this chart, because that's the name of this class. Neutralizing karma and samskaras. So karma has its end in realization. Now, here's a beautiful quote at the bottom. The gods, this is from the Aitareya Upanishad, the gods, guardians of the universe, fell into the mighty ocean of existence in samsara. Right? The gods are in it too, up to their necks, maybe deeper in their case. They're fixed in their position for Mahayugas, for Manvantaras. We don't have to be. We can graduate right out of here in 50 years if we want. To our Atman. See, but the gods aren't able to do that. That's why, where was it? Illumined beings are teachers of men. They're also teachers of the gods. Prajapati is a human being who teaches the gods how to transcend their godhood. And just before they do, they have to come back to earth and live their final human life. That's why they shine. Deva means shining. Devas, the gods, means the shining ones. So if you see one of them back on earth, and it isn't just to dominate over others, it's to get free, then you'll see a very shiny being. You see. An aura. You see. Tejas. Ojas coming off their pores, if you want to speak Kundalini style. So I didn't get through that, did I? God's guardians of the universe fell into the mighty ocean of existence and samsara. The Creator subjected them to hunger and thirst. The gods then spoke to him, saying, "Grant us a place where we can establish ourselves and eat food." He brought them a cow's body, but it was not sufficient for them. Then he brought them a horse's body, and it too was not sufficient. Then he brought them the form of a man. Seeing that form, they rejoiced and exclaimed with joy, "Well done, well done." Therefore, man is indeed well done. So, in Vedanta, you don't have original sin. So you have innate perfection. And if man is cut in the image of God, which would be more Christ-like teaching, then you're looking at God in all beings, you see. The image of God is everywhere. And, you're not going to limit that just to insects or plants or nature or a dolphin or something, you see. The real divinity is in mankind, because out of mankind's mind, at the cosmic, collective, and individual level, has come insects, dolphins, elephants, and elephant drivers. All come out of your mind as a mental projection, right from the Mahat, you see, or from Om, the word. All right, so we have about 20 minutes remaining. Let's look at this palette of conscious future lives to sort of bring this class on neutralizing samskara and karma alone. I hope this was a good run through some really beautiful points in the Sanatana Dharma. That is, dharmic teachings that, if you just say a Sanskrit word, open itself up to all sorts of teachings. That's the beauty about Sanskrit words, or words that have spiritual content. And if you take them apart in your mind, and it's, rather than taking apart an atom and getting an external explosion, you take apart an atom of wisdom that's in a word, and you get an internal implosion. And that's what's giving yogis and rishis bliss. The ananda that's in everything is from taking apart those words and the explosions that happen, and just give them these fits of bliss, you see, these rushes of bliss inside from everything that's in a word, as they say, or in a wisdom particle. So Swami Vivekananda used to say, if you want to prove to yourself that you're not matter, you'll do it by leaving matter alone. Or my teacher used to give that quip all the time. No mind, no matter. No matter, never mind. If you don't see matter, then there's no problem. Matter is the problem. And if there's no mind, there will be no matter, because everything has come from mind. See? So that's how important a pivotal apex, a matrix, the mind is in all of this. See? Sri Ramakrishna used to say, it's the doorway to heaven or the gateway to hell. That's how he would explain it. See? So which way do you want to go with this mind of yours? See? It's your puppy, you've got to train it. So some final words about this. Let's look at the palette of conscious future lives in terms of a teaching that's really pretty Tibetan. The Tibetan Buddhists have been at this for 1,300 years now, since Milarepa and since Marpa brought the teachings actually from India over the Himalayas. And they started meditating very deeply on the dynamics of reincarnation. And so even now to this day we see how many births Dalai Lama has taken and how many births Karmapa has taken and Kala Rinpoche and so forth. So they have been perfecting this and then putting it into action. That is, being reborn as bodhisattvas again and again. And still we're not waking up, and kind of plugging in this whole wisdom about karma, samskara, and rebirth in a positive way, how to transcend the old and bring in the new. They've been doing it for 1,300 years, and of course India much longer. So Sri Sharda Devi has this saying, Holy Mother, human being, today it is, tomorrow it is not. No one will accompany a person after death. Only actions, good and bad, follow, even after death. The result of karma is inevitable, but karma's effects can be counteracted greatly by japa and austerities. So really the method of Ramakrishna order and many of the orders of India has to do with reciting the Lord's name after you get a mantra from the teacher, which is why all of this is important. Qualify yourself, study, get a teacher, find a path, get a mantra, and then put it into practice. Do some austerities if you have problems. Nothing like an austerity to remove problems. Pushing the envelope, pushing your limits. If you want to go on a vision quest or on a retreat or fast or study a scripture, finally read that Gita you've always wanted to read for 30 years and never did it. You see, do some austerity, and that pushes you past your limits. Why? Because the samskara for not doing that has been destroyed. You have proven to yourself that you're not worthless. You're worthful. That the Atman is in you. Now, I set these up as empty canvases so that we could sort of select. The whole premise of this is based on the beautiful teaching that in a conscious lifetime you're going to choose your parents. Now, dharmic parents are going to be hard to find in America. That's why we're teaching here now. That's why Vivekananda came here in 1893, was to give these teachings to people, not just to take some of us who are some English people and a few Americans to India and show them what's possible with an intellectual set. Because he used to say, India's in a tamasic state, America's in a rajasic state in this particular day and age. So he brought a few of these rajasic people who were higher minded, called them pink instead of red. Red of Rajas, but they were pink, red with white, sattva and Rajas combined. So not just for that reason anyway, but to actually start to help form samskaras in the mind of the Westerner. You'd say, well, we should be getting rid of samskaras, right? No, because they're canyon walls. You call out and nothing comes back, you don't have any teaching. But if you call out and you've built a samskara of study, you see, then something will bounce back at you, you see. I mean, if you say, I am Brahman, the echo comes back, no, you're not. Then you'll know where you have to begin working. So a canyon wall is very important. So you want to build a samskara of study, a samskara for meditation, a samskara for bhakti, a samskara for karma, selfless service of God and mankind. And start with that. And you won't even have to really get rid of your old samskaras. You're not watering the weeds anymore. They will just disappear. And as the song in India says, one day I woke up and my ignorance is gone, utterly gone. It goes on to say, who can hide the truth? Who can keep a blazing fire tied in a cotton cloth? Beautiful song of India. So these important to build samskaras, and so you have a samskara, say, for a conscious enlightenment before death, therefore reincarnation in full awareness of who you are. You remember who you are. Because in that particular life, you learn the sets of fives. You learn that no matter where I am after death, if I just know the sets of fives, it's like, it's like, what do they call those in the cars nowadays that guide you anywhere you want to go? Huh? GPS, yeah. It's like having one of those, spiritually. It's going to guide you on all the inner terrains, wherever you want to go. So you're lost outside of the body at death. All of a sudden you come upon the 5 tanmatras, or the 5 pranas, or you remember teachings about the quintuplication process. Oh, I see, I just have to connect this to this, and this to this. There I am in my dream state. Now I'm connecting it to my deep sleep state. Oh, there's Ramakrishna Loka, I'm fine, you see. Oh, there's the formless Brahman, I'm not ready for that. Help me, Ramakrishna. Whatever the case is. You see. Or, I want to go back to Earth. What? Well, let's send you back consciously. See. So here's some of the empty canvases that I put selections into. Of course, on Photoshop. Where else? I don't think I put them in any great order, but I did want to bring forward that one, choosing dharmic parents prior to entering the womb. Because the Tibetans teach that they actually do that. They'll wait till the fetus is developed, 7-8 months, and they'll, just before it's ejected, they'll identify their consciousness with it. What's it teach us? First, that there is life outside the womb. There is prenatal consciousness. Not just natal and postnatal, but you actually, a witness, was looking on to the whole process, and you were doing the choosing. Now, either you're a bad chooser or a good chooser, you see. So when you find yourself with bad upbringing, bad parenting, so forth, who do you have to blame? And who are you going to call? I know some of you are waiting for that. So dharmic parents, as one friend of mine said, that's my bottom line. If I don't get enlightenment in this lifetime, I want dharmic parents. And I said, well, you're probably not going back to America then, are you? No. Moral and ethical parents are not dharmic parents, by the way. We draw the distinction between that. Moral and ethical parents are a good start, no doubt. But dharmic parents are a whole cut above, maybe more. When you get these teachings, you can see how morality and ethics are a part of virtue and vice, and how virtue and vice is a duality, and so forth and so on. You'll want higher teachings than that, than going from heaven to earth to hell, or going from earth to heaven and fearing hell. That's not going to be satisfying for you. You're either going to be looking at total liberation, sarva mukti, or jivan mukti, or krama mukti, gradual freedom, or conscious birth to help all sentient beings, as the Buddhists say. You're looking at the jivan mukti quotient in Hinduism, or Vedanta, and you're looking at bodhisattva in Buddhism. And let's see, does that exist in any other religion? I haven't found it. Where is that concept? Someone come forth and show it to me. See? A living, liberated soul. It's certainly the idea of every religion but if you're just seeing a moral person, are you seeing a liberated person? That's the question. You'll go up to him and say, why was I born? Well, I can't tell you. Where did children come from? Storks? Where are the answers? See? Sorry. All right, so before you get into the womb, you are arranging life circumstances in order to neutralize your karma. That is, you got out, you saw, and I'm convinced probably most souls are like this. They see that they didn't do as good a job as they wanted to. They remember before getting into the body in that particular lifetime. This is what's called reading the Akashic record and so forth, but it's more explanatory than that. When you get into this body, everything's covered with ignorance. You forget everything. Individually, in the society you're born into has forgotten it. Probably the religion you're in right now has forgotten it. So you forget everything for 70, 80, 90 years, you pass, and you get back into your soul, which in this case would be your subtle body or your causal body, and you say, oh, here I am again, and I just went through that dream, but I really didn't do, I see now that I really didn't accomplish everything I wanted to do, and I made some mistakes, you see, so I'm going to have to go back there and do that again. So sometimes in a strong soul, it's not like kama, karma, and yama are going to force them to go back into the body. They want to go back. Of course, in a free soul, they have a choice. I am going back, I'm not. But even if that intermediate soul were to say, I have to go back, and decided, well, maybe I don't want to, and started to turn away, karma, kama, and yama would be there, you see. You're going back, buddy. You see. Pick your gender, pick your country, pick your parents. I mean, I'm hopping now, you see. This is what you have open to you, and hopefully you have it open due to your teachings of the Dharma, the fives and all that. You had this wisdom in you, you were taught it in that lifetime, so now you have broadened the range of your choice. You have some freedom, not freedom moksha, but you have some freedom to choose and some consciousness. I think probably most people have consciousness outside of the body. If you talk to the Tibetans, then when you pass away, everyone sees the Buddha light, almost bar none. It could be the worst being you can think of, and you'd still see the Buddha light, because evil and good were unreal. It's a very difficult teaching to wrap your minds around, and probably not good to give out to just anyone. But once you're outside of it and you see it all going on, like Buddha saw, cycles of time, you say, that's just going around and around forever. Good and bad are there all the time. Heinous acts are side by side with benign acts, and nothing's changing because of it. For one thing, Brahman isn't changed one iota by all the worship he's getting, nor is he hidden by all the ignorance. It's just a round that's going along in ignorance and nobody sees. You're blind there. You're purblind. So now you get outside of all that and you say, I have to get back into it, and of course there's going to be trepidation about that. But if you're armed with the Dharma, unlike the teaching of morality and ethics, like if you only know that thou shalt not kill, so I'm going to go back into the body. But the Dharma says thou cannot kill. It's impossible to kill because nothing was ever born. Then you don't know the dynamics yet. You think you're being born outside the body, and when you're inside the body, you think to yourself, I was born. And now I have a birthday and I have a death day, you see. But you forgot that the soul is birthless and deathless, and that you're just projecting a life in time. You're dreaming. It's mass collective mental dreaming, the whole thing. None of it is real. And now you know all of a sudden why Vedanta says Brahman Satya Jagad Mithya, and it occurs to you full force. But then you get back into body, and how much of it can you remember or hold? So you go to class, you see. And you keep the Dharma in your mind, you see. Keep pressing against that envelope of your own ignorance, however deep or shallow that might be, until you penetrate through, you see, and you know for all times. What we call enlightenment. Well, like I said, I was bouncing around, and we just have a few minutes, so let's take these real quick. In some sort of order, I would say, you do spiritual practice and attainment in previous lifetimes. So, like I said, you pick that up. If you haven't done sadhana, as we were talking about here, then you start it in this lifetime, and you develop a samskara for sadhana. Let's say, when I told you that at 19, I dropped society and just went off and immediately became vegetarian, start studying the Hindu scriptures and so forth. Let's say I had a samskara for that from a previous lifetime. So people walk up to me and say, well, how did you get into India? I said, I can't explain it. All I know is that I just fell right into it. The minute I was away from society and upbringing, I just fell right into it. It's a samskara. And they say, what's that? You see. And I say, come to class. Now, experiencing a conscious death at the end of the last lifetime is going to be important. The Tibetan Buddhists will tell you this, you see. There's the bardo. You've heard the word. The bardo there's a bardo from the time you die till the time you're reborn again. That's really the period I'm kind of operating from or explaining from right now. That period when you're outside the body and going to take a new body, or you'll see the Buddha light and not take any bodies ever again. Buddha said that, I'm gone and gone forever, have no hope for me for the world. So, you have that choice. But if you're going to go back to satisfy some karma, one, or to perfect yourself, or to be of help to sentient beings, the vows, the basic vows you have there, individually, collectively, and cosmically, then that's what you're about. You're in that bardo between the time of death and rebirth. So that you died consciously based on the teachings that you got is important. There are 2 ways at least to do that, maybe 3. Jamgon Khantrul Rinpoche told me this personally. He said, you can either have a Rinpoche come to you at the time of your death, if you just happen to have a pet Rinpoche in the next room, you say, hey, come on in, I'm ready to die. And read the Tibetan Book of the Dead over you, because, leave the body, but the soul's still hanging around. That's probably why you want to burn the body eventually, so it won't hang around. And so, he's reading out the teachings. See that vulture body, see that body of that man and that woman, and so forth. Don't go there, you see. And so you're hearing this in your subtle body. There's a whole, Tibetan Book of the Dead kind of art to it. So then the soul responds accordingly. It doesn't see the Buddha light, then it goes to one of the 7 Shambhala realms. If it can't do that, get a birth in the Shambhala realms, it has to come back to earth. So there's like 3 choices. So you can either do that as the Rinpoche reads it over your body after death, or you could have practiced the Dharma beforehand from the Rinpoche in life, and he could have given you the teaching so that when you went to death, you'd be all right. You see? And then, of course, the third option is you came into the body anyway in possession of the Dharma. Superior way of doing it. Make sure that you have understood the teachings here and now. See, the most important thing. Now, we probably don't have time to finish all of this, but probably could end with this. Attaining Jivan Mukti in a past lifetime. So that's even beyond just getting the Dharmic teachings. You actually got free from the Dharmic teachings. That's again having wide open choice in the matter, rather than just saying, shall I have to go back and perfect myself, or there's a little bit more I have to accomplish. This is a very high state. I won't name any names, but there was a president of the Ramakrishna order that I had personal darshan with a couple times. And he was asked in my presence there, have you accomplished everything you want to do? Are you free now? And he said, no, there's still more to do for me. I thought it was a marvelous admittance. What he meant by it, I'm not sure. Whether consciously he's coming back to do more, or whether he has to come back for a few more things. Whatever the case may be, I would probably think the former, because he's so respected as to become president of the Ramakrishna order. But very interesting questions this brings up on the subtle level, and causes us to look deeper into the Dharma so that we will get the answers. And that's what I hope happened in these 3 classes on neutralizing karma and samskaras over the last 4 weeks, because 1 week we were on retreat. So this is the last live streaming class until I get to Portland in a couple of weeks. So then Saturday and Sunday there will be live streaming classes for 2 weekends in Portland. So tune in on those if you're local here in Hawaii, and if you're a live streaming audience, you'll know that there will be no class next week and or the weekend after. You can look back on all the YouTube classes though. We just put up one more, and we're putting up 2 more in the next 2 weeks, called Shakti Advaita Vada, which we did last year. So we're always taking these recorded classes and putting credits and editing a little bit, you'll see, and putting them back into our SRV YouTube website so that you can always have access to them. There's some 60 or 70 of them now, and there'll probably be, close to 100 by the end of the year, the new year. So anyway, we'll end with this and end on this note of Jivan Mukti, and the most positive note you can think of that would be the result of neutralizing your karmas and your samskaras. Here, let's end with a chant in Sanskrit. Om Sato Ma Sadgamoya Tamaso Ma Joytir Gamoya Mrichor Ma Amritam Gamoya Abira Bira Mayedi Rudrayate Dakshinamukam Tenamam Pahinicham Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Lead us from darkness to light. Lead us from lower truth to higher truth. Lead us from the unreal to the real. And lead us from the illusion of death to eternal life. Reach us through and through, O Lord and Mother, with thy sweet and benign presence. Om, peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us, may peace be unto all. Om